Chapter 2796. The mysterious young man. She continued with another question. What do you mean by one of your many identities? I carry several identities to cover up who I really am, Difui briefly explained. Gu Shijio could no longer hide her surprise. The man could carry other identities with weaker spiritual power and strength to conceal his true self. During the peak of her power, Gu Shijio was also able to create other identities too. However, her extended period of inactivity had stripped that power away. It seemed that this man must be someone powerful, for he was able to conceal his true self so well. This made her even more curious about his actual identity. Abruptly, she held his wrist. Difui did not push her hand away, though he was surprised by her sudden action. What is this for? Gu Shijio slowly let go of his hand, as if in disbelief. You are only 22 years old. The method that she had just used to check his age was the bone-touching skill, which had never been incorrect when determining one's age. Difui gave her a quick glance before taking back his hand. I am impressed by the precision of your foretelling. You truly are the creator of the universe. Tell me more about you, Gu Shijio sternly said. Difui suddenly let out a good laugh. Divine Lord, you and I have only just met. It is inappropriate for you to study my background so quickly, isn't it? He was obviously reluctant to share about his past, but Gu Shijio refused to step back. Did you come into this world without any parents? Did the essence of heaven and earth create you? She was perplexed by his lack of popularity. Usually, a child birthed by the essence of heaven and earth would be highly appraised and valued by society, which would then lead to a series of fights to take possession of the child. How did Difui stay anonymous for so long? Gu Shijio had never heard of his name anywhere before. Difui seemed offended. He didn't answer Gu Zijia's question, but instead, he threw her a bright piece of thin red cloth and said, "Put this on. It can keep you safe in the vortex of spiritual winds." He then walked away. Slightly disappointed, Gu Shijio knew that she had no way of making the man tell the truth. She decided to keep her questions aside for now. As soon as she opened up the red cloth, a brief touch was enough for her to tell the value of the scarce fabric. It was a piece of sunbeam fabric. Legends have it that the mermaids actually weave the fabric by mixing the rays of sunlight with fresh blood of their own. The cloth produced was able to keep away wind and dust, thus providing its bearer with warmth. Gu Shijio guessed that the reason Difui had left earlier was to get this cloth for her. Nonetheless, other thoughts popped up in her mind. The young man seemed to know the place well. Was this where he grew up? She shook her head to dismiss the thoughts at once, for there were other agendas of higher priority right now. She put on the red cloth and felt as if it was fueled by enormous energy from the sun. All of a sudden, a swirling vortex of winds swung by, so she dived right in. With the protective red cloth, she was no longer bothered by the blowing gales of the vortex. The extreme cold became tolerable. In fact, all she could feel now was the abundance of spiritual energy in the vortex. Gu Shijio spent the next month absorbing the spiritual energy that the land had to offer. Difui never showed up during that time. It would seem that she was abandoned in the icy hills alone. Gu Shijio finally broke free from her stillness in the vortex and walked away in a fresh new display of vitality. Cold winds continued to roam the ridge of ice, but she could hardly feel any discomfort. In a month, her power had recovered by more than 20%. With this amount of power, the cold would not pose a threat to her. Being naturally curious, Gu Shijio wanted to find out more about the place. She had traveled to almost every corner of the land, but could not find any exits. The place was like a self-sustaining environment that had no connections to the outside world. She was worried about her disciple, Fan Qianshi, and her closest servant, Wu Qianyan. She had never been away from them for this long. They must be worried about her. Gu Shijio took a walk around the snow-capped mountain to look for Difui, but could not see him anywhere. To her surprise, she found a stream of fog between the sky and the summit of the mountain. The violent torrents seemed to roll thunderously in that path of fog. She decided to leap into the fog to see if the torrents could lead her all the way out. As soon as she went into the torrents, she could feel her body being lifted in a dazzling swirl. When she finally landed, she was surprised to find herself standing by a hillside, which she found familiar. She soon realized that it was the outskirts of the monster kingdom. However, it was at least 1,000 miles away from the restaurant that she once feasted with Difui, but only 100 miles away from Fanning Valley. Master. Gu Shijie was interrupted by a sudden voice that called out for her from afar. She looked up and saw Fan Qianshi. Excited by the sight of her, he tripped over a stone and swayed a little, but he was not bothered. He continued to walk up to her in disbelief. Master. Chapter 2797. This was revenge. Gu Shijie was infuriated by how he looked. Why do you look so shabby? Fan Qianshi was no longer in clean clothes and his usual grace. Instead, he looked like a complete mess. His robes were all crumbled and even torn. Furthermore, the coarse texture of his hair was unbearable to the eye. He must have left his hair unwashed for a long time. Drawn and pale, he had obviously lost a lot of weight since she last saw him. Gu Shijie was never one who cared about beauty. Nonetheless, she was annoyed by his shabbiness. Fan Qianshi finally understood Gu Zijie's concern. Abruptly, he stopped walking toward her and gave an apologetic bow. Master, I will be back soon. He then left. His sudden change surprised Gu Shijie, to say the least. It did not take him long to come back. Only this time he came back as a new person. His robes were neat and tidy, which finally matched his effortless grace. Master, you have finally come back. I have been looking for you for long enough. Fan Qianshi seemed relieved by the sight of her. His eyes lingered on her suggestively, as he took a step closer to her. Needless to say, he was too fearful to do anything inappropriate. Master, where have you been? People from all 6 worlds have been looking for you. I was worried that something bad happened, so I kept looking everywhere for you. Have they been looking for me? What for? Gu Shijie was confused. She was not surprised by her disciple's effort to locate her, as she had never been away from him for so long. However, her lack of involvement in the 6 worlds had never caused any problems before. She hardly even showed herself in front of the common people throughout the course of her life. Hence, her month-long disappearance should not be a big deal at all to them. Monster. The Monster King visited almost a month ago, stating that he needed to apologize to you personally. I was away, pondering over my mistake in isolation, so Qianyan was the one who stopped him. She told him that you were away and asked him to come back some other time. But he said there was something urgent that he needed to talk to you about. Qianyan did not know what to do, so she came to see me. I was concerned, too, that it could be a matter of urgency, so I tried to contact you but failed. Leaving him no choice, he then left. However, he did not give up. He came back the next day, along with the Emperor Immortal, and stormed their way in. Qianyan and I watched helplessly as they turned Fanning Valley inside out. They could not find you anywhere, so they accused us of having an ulterior motive behind your disappearance, saying that we must have harmed the creator of the universe. Qianyan was held hostage while I was told to locate you in a month. If I failed, they would put Qianyan to death by dismembering her body as a warning. The news came as a shock to all 6 worlds, so everyone started looking for you. Gu Shijie clenched her fist in frustration. This was revenge. It was revenge for bringing death upon the Monster King's beloved sister. The Monster King was suspicious of her power and wanted to test her strength, but was interrupted by the people who Difui had invited over. After the Monster King left, Difui also took Gu Shijie away in a hasty departure. The Monster King must have returned to the same place to look for her, but could not find her anywhere in the Monster Kingdom. Unable to accept his defeat, he decided to make his way to Fanning Valley to find out the truth. In Gu Zijie's absence, he dared to take her servant away as a hostage. Where did they keep Qianyan? Have you heard any news from the Monster Kingdom? With a pause, Fan Qianshi finally uttered, I have been busy trying to locate you. In other words, he had never tried to find out more about Wu Qianyan's whereabouts. Perhaps he did not care much about her life. Wu Qianyan was his childhood friend, someone whom he grew up with. Wu Qianyan had never disobeyed his words. She had implicit faith in him. Many times, she had risked her life just to keep him safe, but the connection did not necessarily imply a deep friendship. Now that Wu Qianyan was suffering in agony, Fan Qianshi did not seem to be bothered at all. Gu Shijiu gave Fan Qianshi a judgmental look. The boy was a little cold-blooded. However, if he ever became the creator of the universe, it would be good for him to have no personal entanglements, so that he could be clear and unbiased in his executions. Perhaps his lack of emotions was a bonus. Either way, Gu Shijiu shook her head to dismiss the problem as it was not her first priority at the moment. She did some calculations and realized that there were 2 days left until the deadline given by the Monster King. Hence, she sent Fan Qianshi away to the Monster Kingdom to collect as much information as he could about Wu Qianyan's whereabouts. Fan Qianshi could no longer keep his eyes open as he swayed and tumbled forward into Gu Zijia's arms. Gu Shijiu quickly held him up and asked, "What is wrong?" Fan Qianshi had to lean on Gu Shijiu to keep his balance. His entire forehead was drenched in cold sweats. "I am too tired." Troubled, Gu Shijiu quickly read his pulse and was surprised by his lack of vitality, which was attributable to overwork and his lack of proper rest. "When did you last sleep?" Gu Shijiu asked. "I have not had any rest since the day of your disappearance, but don't worry, I am still holding on. I will now go and find out more about Qianyan," he reassured. He tried to steady himself, but his stubbornness only worsened his condition. He could not even keep his body straight. At this point he was already sweating uncontrollably. Gu Shijiu could not bear to see him in such a condition. Fan Qianshi turned to look at her. His eyes glimpsed with delight. "Is there anything else that you need, master?" Gu Shijiu did not look at him but raised her hand and tossed him a bottle of pills. "Take 2 pills to help revitalize your body. All right, now go." Fan Qianshi took a look at the bottle in his hand and became slightly disappointed. "Yes, master." He then left. Gu Shijiu watched as Fan Qianshi slowly disappeared and gave an expression of disapproval. She knew what Fan Qianshi was thinking. He was clearly hoping that he could stay by her side. He was actually very reluctant to go. However, the more he wanted to stay, the more she had to make him go. Gu Shijiu did not stay for long before returning to Fanyin Valley. The place had been completely ransacked. Many things were lost, including the herbs and magical items that remained unknown even to her closest disciple. Luckily, she had kept away some of the most important herbs and magical items in her personal storage bag. Otherwise, the theft would have totally cleared her out. She took a look at the signs on her palm and let out an expression of contempt. With the recovery of her spiritual power, perhaps she could finally teach the Monster King a lesson. The most interesting news that had been circulating in the Monster Kingdom was about Wu Qianyan, the female servant of the creator deity, who was accused of murdering her master and would be punished by dismemberment on a full moon night. The monster princess was supposed to be punished first, but according to the law of the Monster Kingdom, only one criminal could be punished by dismemberment in a month. Since they agreed to punish Wu Qianyan first, the death penalty of the monster princess, Yao Tingting, was postponed until a month later. Gu Shijiu heard about the news when she first arrived in the capital of the Monster Kingdom, Lanhua City. She had her face disguised before meeting up with Fan Qianshi, who had arrived a day before. Together, they entered a restaurant. The restaurant was a place where gossips were widespread. She heard about the news from the people around her while she was eating. Chapter 2798. What if I died? The Monster King had arranged everything well. Wu Qianyan's penalty was expected to be carried out by the end of the day. Hence, they still had 8 hours. Gu Shijiu was glad that she made her return at the right time. Otherwise, the only thing that would be waiting for her was Wu Qianyan's dead body. She gave Fan Qianshi a quick look and asked, "If I did not return, would you really let Qianyan die?" After a short pause, Fan Qianshi murmured, "Yes." He knew what Gu Shijiu was expecting him to answer. He could give her an answer that she wished to hear, but he did not want to lie to her. Perhaps, there was no way he could lie to her even if he wanted to. Lying was essentially part of his life, but never to his master. He never had the courage or the heart to lie in front of Gu Shijiu. "Master, she is only a servant," Fan Qianshi added arrogantly. Gu Shijiu was at a loss of words from his arrogance. "Qianshi, is there anything that will make you risk your life?" "There is you, master." Fan Qianshi answered frankly. Gu Shijiu continued, "What if I died?" You are the creator of the universe, Master. How can you ever die? You should not even joke about it. What if? I am certain that every life form on all 6 worlds will be sent to the grave along with your death. Gu Shijie was utterly disappointed by his answer. Damn it! She called out while banging the table furiously with her chopsticks. Panicked, Fan Qianshi fell to his knees and said nothing more. Gu Shijie was troubled. The creator of the universe would be the one controlling all 6 worlds. It was forbidden for that person to have any personal entanglements, but one needed to have mercy and compassion, so that life could flourish. If the creator of the universe were a man of selfishness, cruelty, and bigotry, all 6 worlds would be inescapably doomed. All of a sudden, she felt that years of her patience and guidance had gone to waste. The more she looked at him, the more she became speechless with rage. It was only a question that she simply asked through directed audios to test him, but the result was obviously unexpected. Nonetheless, it was not time for her to teach him a lesson. Gu Shijie stared helplessly at him for a while before leaving in silence. Fan Qianshi waited to be reprimanded, but did not hear a word from Gu Shijie. He looked up and was surprised by her absence. Troubled, he stood right up and was ready to leave, but the waiter stopped him. Mister, the bill will be 100 pieces of spiritual pearls. Fan Qianshi tossed him a bag of 300 spiritual pearls. Take it. He then left swiftly. Dismembering a prisoner was a punishment that was deemed brutal, but that did not stop the curious public from flooding in to watch. The execution ground was set to be at Lanhua City's biggest square. There was a scaffold, built with a pillar in the center. Chains of red metal secured the wire fence. Needless to say, the scaffold was where the dismemberment would be carried out. It was still early, and yet the place was already crowded. Gu Shijie took a turn around the square. She could tell that the place was already installed with many secret doors. Through teleportation, she went a door and realized that there were troops ready at every corner. Every soldier was equipped with a sword as well as a bow and arrows. What do you think? Is it necessary for the Monster King to send out so many troops to dismember a disciple who is found to be guilty of killing her master? Does he really need 30,000 soldiers to be gathered here? That is right. It is unnecessary. There is no way she can run away. Besides, who will be here to save her? Chapter 2799. It was indeed a well-thought plan. It is hard to tell. I heard that the creator of the universe also took a boy as her disciple. His power should not be underestimated. He grew up with Wuxia, so he could be here to raid the execution ground and rescue the condemned. It is possible, but he has only been with the creator of the universe for 5 years. How strong can he possibly be? If he shows up alone, even our general can take care of him single-handedly. We might not even be able to help. Like what the king told us, no matter who shows up at the execution ground today to save Wu Qianyan, they should be found equally guilty, which is punishable by death. Our swords are equipped with the strongest kind poison, killing the person even with the slightest scratch. All of us only have to be careful not to injure our own men. Also, the king warned us that Fan Qianshi is exceptionally cunning. He could show up today as an impersonation of the creator of the universe to fool us all. The king told us to have no concerns when we fight, as the impostor cannot intimidate us with his fake power. The scandal set tongues wagging, so Gu Shijie was able to collect a lot of information from the heated discussion. Smilingly, she listened to their conversations in total contempt. Obviously, the person that the Monster King truly wanted to defeat was Gu Shijie, the one and only creator of the universe. Wu Qianyan was only taken as bait. The Monster King must have thought that it was a good chance for him to finish her off, now that her kung fu was not as strong as before. It was all but a trap, waiting for her to fall right into it. If she rushed her way to the execution ground to save Wu Qianyan, the Monster King would brand her as an imposter. Perhaps he would even push her into a fight. If defeated, the Monster King would take the victory to build his own reputation, which would further reinforce his status as their leader. If she won the fight, the Monster King could easily get away by making up an excuse. He could say that the fight was necessary to make sure that she was the genuine creator of the universe. Surely, if she refused to show up, Wuxia would be brought to death by dismemberment. Even the reason for her death was so legitimately made to fool the public. The Monster King could exercise many options, regardless of the situation. It was indeed a well-thought plan. Gu Shijio took a look at the poison on the swords, and could not help but jeer at these armed men. She was the creator of the universe, born with immunity against all poisons. These arrows would only cause an uncomfortable sensation on her skin without any actual harm. She took a swift leap across the air, which caught the attention of the people nearby. These soldiers could tell that someone was there. Alerted, all of them flashed their weapons at the intruder, but there was no intruder in sight. "Who is there?" one of the officers shouted out loud. The only answer that they could hear was the sound of the wind whistling through the door, sending cold chills down their spine. Aghast, they looked at one another helplessly. "Did you see anyone?" the officer asked his men. All of the armed men shook their heads. Could it be the creator of the universe? She must be mad at us for taking away her servant. It cannot be. If she is here, the one that she should be looking for is the king. Why would she come here to scare us? "Officer, should we report this to the king?" After giving it much thought, the officer decided that it was a bad idea. No need, perhaps it was only a mistake. If it is found to be a false report, death will await us. The Monster King was a ruthless man. The officer should not take the report to the king without a clear description of the intruder's appearance and capabilities. That would only result in punishment for the officer. Chapter 2800. Meeting again. The officer's daughter was one of the many victims that were killed by the princess. Although the princess was sentenced to death, the penalty had yet to be carried out. Knowing how much the Monster King actually cared for his sister, many things could still happen before the princess was truly dismembered. In order to minimize any potential trouble, the officer decided not to report the incident, so that the Monster King had one less thing to worry about. These armed men were loyal to the officer, so they would surely listen to his every command. A timid man fearfully asked, "Officer, if the intruder is really the creator of the universe, should we attack her when she shows up later?" The officer firmly shook his head in disapproval. "No. Legend has it that anyone who does any harm to the creator of the universe shall be punished by God and lead a miserable life." The creator of the universe caught the murderer who killed his daughter, so the officer respected her. He could not care less if the intruder was only an impostor. He would never allow his men to do any harm to her. His men were bewildered, for they had never heard of any legends that forbade anyone from harming the creator of the universe. However, they unquestionably believed everything that the officer said. Gu Shijio listened to their conversation from a hidden corner, and was amused. She had never heard of such sayings either. It seemed like the officer was only trying to scare off his men. In fact, she was not expecting anyone from the enemy to actually be on her side, so this came as a surprise to her. Gu Shijio paid a few visits to different groups of soldiers in the same manner as she did before. Her surprise visits had caused great alarm. Some even thought it could be a paranormal encounter. Others thought that it was a warning sign from the creator of the universe. The armed men had become anxious and doubtful. However, they were more worried about being punished by the Monster King if they did not do their job, so none of the officers reported the incident to the authority. Certainly, many of them had their own thoughts about what they would do when the creator showed up. Some were simply not ready to bear the title of being the murderer of a divine being. Before they could be sure that the person was an impostor, they would choose to hold their weapons, or at most, act like they were fighting. Gu Shijio took less than an hour to terrorize the soldiers. Relieved, the false alarm had solved some of her major problems. With the recovery of her strength, it should be enough for her to take care of the Monster King alone. If the soldiers could stay out of the fight, she was confident that she would win. With that out of the way, she then proceeded to the prison. In the past, the people of the Monster Kingdom actually rebelled against him due to his ruthlessness, but eventually, these people were arrested and put away in prison. In order to prevent these problematic people from escaping, the Monster King had to build a stronger prison, reinforced with a bastion made of iron. Gu Shijio took a walk around the prison and was shocked. All of these walls were carved with a series of incantations and symbols. With these reinforcements, all kinds of spells would fail to penetrate through the wall. She gently touched the carvings on the wall and found that the traces were somewhat familiar, but she could not remember where she last encountered the same traces. Without wasting any more time, she went straight into the prison by teleportation. Her teleportation skill was a special power that only the creator of the universe possessed. During that time, no amount of incantations or spells could stop her. The inside of the prison was dark and cold. Every cell housed a criminal that was severely punished. All of them looked equally unwashed and unkempt. Some of them lay quietly on the ground, unconscious, while others were groaning in pain. Frustrated by the brutal sight, Gu Shijiu could already foresee Wu Qianyan's mistreatment. She closed her eyes to trace Wu Qianyan's scent in the prison, but to no avail. She was surprised by the result, as she could generally sense anyone within a 3-mile radius. Chapter 2801. Meeting again 2. The prison was not too big, so the area was definitely confined within 3 miles. She should be able to sense her presence if Wu Qianyan was held captive here. Had the Monster King concealed Qianyan's aura? Or was she even in the prison at all to begin with? If she could not find her here, the only way left for her to find her servant was to raid the execution ground. "Mister, this way please." Gu Shijiu could hear the Monster King's voice from around the corner, as the sound of footsteps was slowly closing in. Gu Shijiu lounged in the corner of the corridor and became invisible in the dark. Soon a group of people came in. The first one from the group was the Monster King. Next to him was a man in purple. They were followed by a group of soldiers that the Monster King trusted most. Gu Shijiu gasped in disbelief as soon as she saw the man in purple. His entire face was concealed under a mask painted with ghostly features. She could only see his big, watery eyes shining brightly in the dark. Could the man be Di Fui? His physique certainly resembled Di Fui's. Why was he here? Hadn't his relationship with the Monster King fallen through? Nonetheless, it was possible that the man was not Di Fui. Maybe they happened to share similar features. She stood in the dark, contemplating the situation. Abruptly, the man in purple threw her a quick glance, followed by a frown. Panicked, Gu Shijiu could not help but think if he had seen her. No one had ever seen through her invisibility skill, so it was rather unlikely that the people in front of her could see her. It was only a quick glance before the man in purple looked away and continued walking next to the Monster King, as if nothing had happened. Perhaps she had overthought. Gu Shijiu was curious about what would happen next, so she followed the group of people from behind. She then overheard the conversation that was exchanged through directed audios between the mysterious man and the Monster King. The brutal content of their conversation sent chills down her spine. The Monster King asked, "Mister, can the princess really use Wu Qianyan's lungs?" The man in purple answered, "Well, you can choose to doubt me. I trust you, mister. Without your miraculous skills that work wonders, my sister would be long dead. I was only asking because I was curious. I have not heard that replacing organs is actually possible. Have you not heard about the case where an entire head was replaced? Haven't I performed it to you before? The soldiers were still well and alive even after I exchanged their heads. If I can deal with a head replacement, replacing a pair of lungs would be considered child's play." The Monster King heaved a sigh of relief and replied, "I know very well that you have magic hands that restore health. I trust you and your skills. After replacing my sister's injured lungs, I shall need your help to swap the heads of my sister and the servant. Only then can my sister escape death." The man in purple glanced at the Monster King. "Are you planning to use the servant as a replacement for the princess, by making her face the punishment on her behalf?" The Monster King paused for a while but did not intend to lie. "Of course. I am only sacrificing the worthless servant for the precious life of the princess. She should feel lucky for this opportunity. Are you against it?" The man in purple casually flicked his robes and gently replied, "My mission is to help people who are in need of my medical skills. I do not care about anything else. If you are able to pay me well, the princess will only be a patient of mine and not a prisoner." Relieved, the Monster King laughed out loud. "You are truly an understanding man. He then added, Wu Qianyan is already dying. Her sacrifice will be a great service to my sister. Her death will not be in vain. The man in purple calmly said, I am only concerned that she will scream aloud later on the scaffold, thus defaming your good name. You should take the matter seriously. The Monster King gave him a serious look. That is all right. You can mute her so there is no way she can speak. She will have to accept her own death. Chapter 2802, Meeting Again 3. The man in purple answered nonchalantly, I only save lives. You should take care of it yourself. All right, I shall personally give her a lesson to shut her up. It is all up to you. I only ask for complete silence before I start operating on her lungs. I cannot risk killing her in prison due to a distraction. Once she is dead, she will not be able to be punished in the public eye. Don't worry. You can go in and do whatever you please. I will wait outside and be sure that nothing distracts you. Their conversation was carried out secretly through directed audios, so none of his men could hear anything. However, none of their secrets managed to escape Gu Zijia's ears. The Monster King was indeed a bastard. Not only had he plotted against the creator of the universe, but he had also tortured Wu Qianyan, and intended to use her body to save his sister's life. Gu Shijia was glad that she made it into the prison in advance. Otherwise, she might not be able to save Wu Qianyan. She gave a stern look of disapproval to the man in purple. The cold-blooded man who cared only about money was nothing like Di Fui. Perhaps it was only his appearance that reminded her of Di Fui. Gu Shijia was overwhelmed by a sudden urge to take the mask away, so that she could reveal the man's true identity. At that moment, the mysterious man in purple gave her another look with squinted eyes. Gu Shijia found her heart thumping in anxiety. The man still reminded her of Di Fui. Soon, the group of people stopped by a cell, and the Monster King unlocked the door for everyone to go in. Gu Shijia finally saw her servant. Wu Qianyan was obviously injured. Her face looked pale and lacking vitality. Bloodstains were all over her body. As soon as she heard the door, she opened her eyes and flew immediately into a rage. What a foolish and self-indulgent ruler. You will never get any information about my master from me. What else do you want to do to me? Just do it. My master will get revenge for me on all of you. The Monster King gave her a wicked smile and said, Don't worry. I am not here to make you say anything. I even have a doctor here to help you with your injuries. You should do as he says and make no trouble. Wu Qianyan stared at him doubtfully and refused to believe anything that he said. Nonetheless, the Monster King was reluctant to say anything more. He turned to the man in purple and said, Mister, I shall hand over everything here to you. He then left swiftly with his men. The prison was sealed again, leaving the man in purple inside with Wu Qianyan and Gu Shijia, who was still invisible. After the Monster King was gone, the man in purple gave his shoulder a few quick taps, as if sweeping off the dust that the Monster King's hand left behind. Gu Shijia observed the neatness of his robes, and the meticulous details of his appearance. The man in purple and Di Fui looked very much alike, and both seemed to have an obsessive compulsion for hygiene and neatness. Who are you? What do you want from me? Wu Qianyan treated him with defensive hostility. I am here to save your life, the man in purple briefly replied. Wu Qianyan answered in disbelief. How? Suddenly, she thought of Fan Qianshi, and her eyes immediately glistened with hope. Did Qianshi the young master send you here? I know he has many friends from across the world. He must have sent you here for me. The man in purple was unimpressed. Sorry to disappoint you. He then put a seal on one of Wu Qianyan's acupuncture points, so she could no longer talk. When all was done, he took a look at Gu Shijia in the corner. Divine Lord, how long do you plan to stay invisible? Astonished, Wu Qianyan certainly did not expect Gu Zijia's presence in the prison cell. She followed the direction of his eyes and looked at the corner of the prison cell. Perplexed, she could not see Gu Shijia anywhere. Soon, Gu Shijia made her entrance. Slowly, her figure came into sight. Gu Shijia locked her gaze on the man in purple and said, D. Sponsored content. The man in purple quickly put one finger on his lips and signaled her not to mention his name. Divine Lord, You may take your servant away now. Wu Qianyan reeled forward in shock and disbelief. She kneeled before Gu Shijio and looked at her tearfully. Soon, she wiped away her tears and continued to touch her forehead on the ground repeatedly to worship Gu Shijio. Gu Shijio pulled her up. If I take her away, how are you going to answer to the Monster King? Do you need me to take you along? She asked Di Fui. It would not be a problem at all for her to teleport away with two of them together. Di Fui squinted his eyes at her. I have my own plans. I can take her out even without your help. How? Gusju was curious about his plans. The prison was heavily guarded, so it would be difficult for him to take a prisoner out when so many people were watching. Also, she did not know anyone else that was equipped with the ability to teleport. Sponsored content. Di Fui did not answer. Instead, he took out his storage bag and uncovered a person from within. The person lay unconsciously on the ground. Gu Shijio took a closer look and was shocked. This is the monster princess. Di Fui calmly explained. She is the one who should be punished with 1,000 cuts. In an instant, he was already performing a spell on the monster princess to alter her looks. She now shared the same appearance as Wu Qianyan. It was so skillfully imitated that she was indistinguishable from the original. Even her injuries looked the same. Gu Shijio finally had a grasp of his so-called plan. He was substituting one person for another. Sponsored content. She suddenly thought of the bag that Di Fui briefly showed her. It somehow reminded her of something that she once saw in the past. From her memory, she knew that someone had the same bag. However, it had been a long time since she last saw the bag. She had lain dormant for too long to remember things from the past, but she remembered that the bag could only store non-living items. Any living thing would suffocate to death in the bag. May I have a look at your bag? No. Di Fui rejected right away. She had never been rejected in such a direct manner before. Gu Shijio sighed. Don't worry. I am not trying to get my hands on your precious bag. It somehow reminds me of an old friend's item, so I really just want to have a look. An old friend? Di Fui was intrigued. Which old friend of yours? His eyes looked fiery and a little intimidating. Gu Shijio shook her head and frankly said, an old friend from a very long time ago. You are too young to know anyone from those times. Let me ask you again. Where did you get the bag? The bag can only carry non-living items, right? Scornfully, Di Fui answered. Is this an interrogation? That is not what I meant. I really am just curious. Gu Shijio replied with a frown. Sponsored content. Sorry, but I am not obliged to answer your curiosity, Di Fui sternly said. A small, narrow-bladed knife then slowly appeared on his palm. He frowned as he took a look at the monster princess. Divine Lord, do you know how to extract one's pulmonary lobe from their lungs? He threw the question at Gu Shijio. Confidently, Gu Shijio folded her arms in a display of authority. Of course. As the creator of the universe, she could even make a human being from scratch if she was given enough materials. Extracting one's pulmonary lobe was only a small matter. Di Fui looked relieved. He then passed the knife to Gu Shijio and said, Please operate on her, Divine Lord. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsor's game to support us. Gu Shijio refused the invitation. I am not obliged to do that for you. She intended to give Di Fui a taste of his own medicine. Sponsored content. Divine Lord, I am actually here to help you, Di Fui said while looking at her intently. You should finish what you have started then. The monster princess is quite pretty. You should be glad that you have a glimpse of her body, Gu Shijio teased. She then grasped Wu Qianyan by her wrist and was ready to leave. If I told you the secret of my bag, would you care to stay and help me? Di Fui quickly added. Gu Shijio stopped abruptly. Tell me first, and then I will decide, she answered without looking back at him. As offered, Di Fui was ready to tell her what she wanted to know. The bag has always been around. I do not remember who it belonged to in the first place. You were right. The bag can only contain non-living items, but there is an exception. Without any breath and consciousness, the being can be contained in the bag for a while. Sponsored content. His explanation was thorough, but not entirely convincing. As far as I am concerned, a living thing can still breathe even without consciousness. Gu Shizhou turned around and said to Difui. Difui revealed a pill to her. With this, one can mimic death for 2 hours. Gu Shizhou finally understood the situation. You said that even without my help, you can still take Qianyan out of here. Were you going to feed her the pill so that she could mimic death and fit into your bag? She finally made sense of the whole situation now. Divine Lord, you are absolutely right. Please operate on her now. Sponsored content. Gu Shizhou took the knife and played with it around her fingers. I do not need it, she said while flicking the knife away from her hand. She did not even bother to strip off the princess robes. She laid her hand flat on the prince's chest, and her palms slowly turned invisible as she marked a slash across her skin, thus cutting the prince's chest wide open. Oddly enough, the way she cut the skin open with her bare hand caused no bleeding at all. She then pinched her fingers together inside of the wound and squeezed out a piece of the pulmonary lobe. Swiftly, she put her palms together, and the flesh came together and healed instantly. Keep the scar, Difui added. Gu Shizhou gave the wound a few flicks, and soon, the scar remained on the princess' chest. The whole operation was smooth and brief. Everything was done in less than 15 minutes. Clear blown away, Wu Qianyan looked at her in silent wonder. In awe, Difui gazed at Gu Shizhou with the same amount of respect and admiration. You truly are the creator of the universe. She flicked her fingers as if trying to clean them. There was not a single drop of blood on her delicate hands. She then pulled Wu Qianyan over and said, You have saved my servant's life this time, so I shall no longer be bothered by the way you previously made me as a tool to your plans. We are even now. She left swiftly with her teleportation ability. Difui was speechless. He knew clearly that this would not be the last time they met. Nonetheless, he set the matter aside and fed the monster princess with a pill. Soon she regained consciousness. She realized that she was still in the prison cell. Panicked, she looked around and saw a manly figure's back. She tried to sit up, but pain swept through her entire body every time she moved. Sponsored content. She took a deep breath and said in anger, Who are you? Why are you standing there like an idiot? How dare you not bow before me? Her voice was unexpectedly weak, for she did not have the strength to express her frustration aloud. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsor's game to support us. The man slowly turned around to look at her. He was still wearing a mask, but the mask was not able to conceal his grace and elegance. Sponsored content. The monster princess was stunned momentarily. Her eyes sparkled with light as soon as she saw the man. You should remove the mask so that I can have a better look at your face. If you are good-looking enough, I shall forgive you for neglecting the princess' need. You are not qualified for that, the man sternly replied. How dare you? Who do you think you are? How could you talk to me in such a defiant manner? When I get out of here, I will tell my brother everything that you have done so that he can cut you into 1,000 pieces as your punishment. The princess was triggered. How many lives have you taken away using this cruel method? The look in his eyes was intimidating. Sponsored content. Humph. Are you scared? Every act of defiance must be punished with 1,000 cuts. There were too many men who disobeyed me, so all of them ended up the same. How can I remember them all? However, if you behave, I will treat you differently. For over 300 years, you have slashed 481 men to death and murdered 530 women with your venomous python. The man interrupted her with the death toll. The monster princess was shocked. Who are you? How did you find such information? You should only answer yes or no. Sponsored content. Yes, but so what? They deserved it. They failed to obey me. I cannot remember exactly how many of them died in my hands. The princess answered arrogantly. She could not care less about the number of deaths, for she was already used to it. She had been taking advantage of her royal status and her brother's special favor for her to the point where she became so arrogant and domineering. Apart from her murderous instinct, she was also very attracted to handsome men. She would take any man that she found gorgeous, and if he refused to stay, she would sentence him to death by dismemberment. Surely, the death sentence would only be carried out in private. She would be there to witness their death. Every time these men died painfully, she found herself to be in euphoria just by hearing them screaming. As for the women who died in the prince's hands, they were mostly passers-by who had their eyes lingering on the handsome men that the princess wanted, or women who used to be the men's fiancés or close friends. As long as her men expressed any kind of affection towards other women, the princess would immediately be driven with immense jealousy and do crazy things. So many people had lost their lives in her hands. There was no way she could keep track. The fiery look in Difui's eyes slowly faded, but the smile of mockery remained. It is best if you admit it yourself. What is there that I cannot admit? Humph. No matter how many people I kill, my brother will always have my back. I shall never be treated any lesser in his eyes or be punished in any way. Without the creator of the universe, I would not be so badly injured. Humph. When I have fully recovered, I shall kill the creator of the universe and slash the bitch piece by piece. She made a nasty remark that was embellished in gore and violence. Sponsored content finally. She looked around the cell and was perplexed. She asked, "Why am I here in this hideous place? Didn't my brother arrange a room for me in the Jinxiu Palace? By the way, where is my brother? He told me that a scapegoat is waiting for me. Why am I here, all of a sudden?" "I am the one who brought you here," Difui calmly explained. "Don't worry. You will get to see your brother shortly." He pointed at one of her acupuncture points, and then muted her speech. Right before her brother walked into the cell. "Mister, is everything done?" Difui showed him a small bag that contained the pulmonary lobe. "I am glad that I have not disappointed you. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsors game to support us." Delighted, the Monster King took the pulmonary lobe over to have a look at it before giving it back to Difui. "Mister, please proceed to Jinxiu Palace and replace this with my sister's dying lungs." Sponsored content. The monster princess was confused, but could immediately tell that something was not quite right. She continued to make inaudible pulses of crying from the corner. Unfortunately, she could not move or say anything. Difui threw her a quick glance and said, "Your Majesty, this woman is equipped with some spiritual power. I am afraid that muting her speech will not be enough. What if she breaks free and starts making noise in the streets?" "That is easy. I shall cut her tongue away." He walked briskly towards the monster princess and secured her chin. The look in her eyes was filled with horror and fright, but that did not stop the Monster King. A sharp knife was then presented in front of her. With a clean cut, blood was spilled all over the place, and her entire tongue was cut away. She trembled in pain as soon as her tongue was cut. Her trembling body clearly showed her fear. She was in so much pain that she almost passed out. The Monster King thought that the bloody scene was filthy, so he let go of the monster princess and watched as she crashed to the ground in agony. "Come here." Sponsored content. 2 soldiers approached. "Take her to the prisoner's carriage and send her away to the execution ground," the Monster King commanded. Alarmed, the monster princess was confused by her brother's brutality. She disregarded the pain and tried very hard to crawl over to the Monster King's legs, but was given a hard kick before she even made it close. Finally, she lay flat on the ground, with barely any strength to spare. The Monster King refused to look at her any longer, and walked right out of the cell along with Difui. "Mister, we should do it while it is fresh and warm. Take this pulmonary lobe, and save my sister's life." "Will do," Difui reassured before walking away. The Monster King quietly watched as Difui walked further into the distance. He disapproved of Difui's arrogance and unfriendliness, but was impressed by his sensibility to tackle different situations. Sponsored content. With the man's help, the Monster King believed that his sister would surely survive. Then he took a look at the sky and realized that it was almost time to carry out the punishment. He needed to be at the execution ground and personally monitor the entire process, as he wanted to know if the creator of the universe would really show up. Arrogantly, he hoped that the weakened creator would show up so that he could teach her a lesson. He talked with his sister to know more about the details of their earlier encounter. He needed to know about Guzigius' every move and every spell while fighting the venomous python. From what he observed, the god of creation must have lost a huge part of her spiritual power. Perhaps, she could not even defeat him in her current condition. The creator of the universe had a spiritual body, so he needed to use the double physical and spiritual cultivation to increase his power tremendously. After the cultivation, he could then kill her and consume her body and soul as a whole. Her body would be a better supplement than any of the existing pills around. It would surely improve his physical strength and spiritual power. This was a golden opportunity that he could not afford to miss. He really hoped that the creator would show up. Everything on the execution ground was set up prior to her arrival, so it would be a waste of his meticulous plan if she did not show up. She should be here, he thought. Wu Qianyan was Guzigius' one and only servant. Although she was not officially a disciple, he reckoned that Gu Shijie would still come for her. He then licked his lips in a display of confidence. The reality was considerably different from the Monster King's sweet expectation. Wu Qianyan was tied to the pillar, and the executioner had been slashing her dozens of times so far. Yet, the creator of the universe still had not shown up. The Monster King began to get worried. Had anything happened to her? There was no reason why she would not show up today. Had the Emperor Immortal taken her away? The Emperor Immortal was aware of the Monster Kingdom's current situation, so that he might have secretly involved himself in the feud. Sponsored content disguised, Gu Shijie found herself standing among the onlookers. She was delighted to see the monster princess being punished. The violent princess had dismembered many innocent people. Today, she finally got a taste of her own medicine. A sudden voice came interrupting. "Bastard, let go of Qianyan." A young man could be seen approaching the scaffold. Gu Shijie stood upright. Things were not looking good for her now. The young man was Fan Qianshi, her only disciple that she very much cherished. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsors game to support us. When Gu Shijie finally took Wu Qianyan out of the prison in the Monster Kingdom, she quickly settled her down in a guest inn where she could rest. Gu Shijie tried to contact Fan Qianshi using her sensing ability to get him to stay with Wu Qianyan and be her caretaker. Still, the boy never answered or returned her call. Sponsored content: her sensing ability was supposed to be a form of telepathic communication. Only her disciple and her servant were equipped with the ability to receive her call. She could easily reach out to them as long as they stayed within a radius of a few hundred miles. Therefore, Gu Zijia's failure to communicate with Fan Qianshi could only mean two things. He was either hundreds of miles away, or was trapped in some sort of forbidden land. Although Wu Qianyan had suffered severe injuries, these wounds could be easily taken care of by Gu Shijie. Very quickly, she wrapped up Wu Qianyan's open wounds with dressings to help her heal better. Some pills were also administered to help with her internal injuries. In merely an hour, Wu Qianyan was already halfway through her recovery. She could already leave the bed and take care of herself. Relieved, Gu Shijie put a wizardry barrier at the door before leaving Wu Qianyan alone in the room. When everything was done and secured, she left. Sponsored content: her original plan was to wait for the dismemberment to come to an end before revealing the truth before the Monster King's eyes. She wanted to humiliate him publicly, but plans changed when Fan Qianshi showed up so suddenly in an unplanned rush. He did not even have the strength to protect himself against the Monster King's 8 best soldiers in his current state. Hence, the way he emerged onto the scaffold was an act of digging his own grave. What a little rebel, Gu Shijie thought. Gu Shijie clenched her fists and looked at Fan Qianshi in frustration. He was ruining her plan. The boy went straight for the pillar and shouted, "Hey bastard! Let go of Qianyan." Sponsored content: the Monster King was delighted to see him. With the disciple's presence, he now had more reasons to force the creator of the universe to show up. But first he needed to put on a show. "Fan Qianshi, I have been looking for you. Your time is up. Where is your master? Were you the one responsible for her death?" "Soldiers! Take him down!" The Monster King exclaimed in a fury. All his soldiers rushed ahead and were ready to fight. In an instant, the scaffold became a war zone. The executioner was not sure if he should continue his work, so he looked at the Monster King for confirmation. The Monster King gestured to his man and firmly said, "Don't stop. Keep going." Therefore, the executioner continued to slice Wuxia into thin pieces of meat. The Monster Princess' speech was no longer muted, but without her tongue, she could only screech in agony, emitting wails like a lost soul. Her voice was piercing, loud enough to make everyone's flesh creep. She screamed on, as her body trembled with each slice. The misery was surely worse than death. Alas, she finally realized how painful it actually was to be dismembered. On the other hand, Gu Shizhou was still watching the fight. She had her spells ready underneath her sleeves, so if anything went wrong, she could assist Fan Qianshi as soon as possible. After a while, she found herself astonished by his adequacy. Fan Qianshi's kung fu had increased by twofold. He was able to move unhindered among the armed men. Also, he had never once put himself in an inferior position. The moves that he was using were taught to him by Gu Shizhou, but the source of spiritual power that he was channeling was obtained from something else. She could obviously sense a hint of violence and rage within him. Sponsored content. As soon as he emerged on the scaffold, 2 soldiers were already injured. She wanted to communicate with him via her sensing ability and tell her that the girl on the pillar was an imposter, so there was no point for him to fight anymore. However, seeing his ability made her change her mind. Fan Qianshi's attacks were a little odd. Since he was doing great on his own, she decided not to interrupt. With a swift leap, Fan Qianshi sent the guard across the air. After a few twists and turns, he found his way up to the pillar and launched a stinging attack at the executioner. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsors game to support us. The executioner spat out a mouthful of blood and was severely beaten. Hence, the punishment was halted. Sponsored content. The Monster King saw the whole scene unfold and decided that it was time for him to interrupt. His spiritual power was already at the level of a great deity, so every move of his was equipped with an enormous force. He launched his first strike at Fan Qianshi, which was a powerful attack. However, Fan Qianshi could easily take a step back to avoid getting hit. Gu Shizhou observed his moves and could already make a few predictions. She could see that the Monster King would not hit Fan Qianshi, since one tiny step was enough to avoid his first attack. But to her utter surprise, Fan Qianshi did not move at all. He disregarded the swift and fierce attack that was clearly aimed at him. Instead, he went straight to the pillar and cut away the chains that were holding Wuxia in place. As a result, Fan Qianshi had to suffer a blow to his back in return for breaking one of the chains. After a loud snap, Fan Qianshi was hit and sent flying across the square. Being severely injured, he spat out a mouthful of blood while hanging on helplessly in the air. The plot twist was alarming for Gu Shizhou. She could no longer stay still. With a swift leap, she teleported right in the air and held Fan Qianshi in place. Fan Qianshi had suffered a powerful blow, so as soon as Gu Shizhou grabbed him in her hands, she had to take a swift turn and help him find his footing. Gracefully, they both landed on the scaffold. Sponsored content. Master. Fan Qianshi was happy to see her. Unfortunately, he spat out another mouthful of blood. She could easily tell how badly he was hit. His complexion was pale and drawn, but fortunately, he remained conscious. Master, I thought you did not want me anymore. What an idiot. Gu Shizhou steadied him on the platform before putting a pill right into his mouth. I never asked you to leave. What makes you think that I gave up on you? Without any hesitation, Fan Qianshi swallowed the pill. Soon enough, he was no longer spitting out blood. His complexion, however, was still ghastly pale. Master, I have done my best, but I still could not get Qianyan free. Gu Shizhou frowned at him. She knew immediately that her words had prompted him to risk his life in this rescue mission. All she wanted to see was his attitude and kindness towards a friend. She never wanted him to rush into a crude and impetuous decision that did more harm to him than good. As opposed to her expectation, she thought that he was smart enough to analyze the situation first before making any reckless moves. Sponsored content. Initially, Gu Shizhou had her identity disguised while moving among the crowd. However, as soon as she emerged in the air, she finally revealed her true self. Fortunately, her face was still concealed under a mask, so her ethereal beauty had yet to be uncovered. She stood high up on the scaffold in her emerald dress, overlooking the crowd with an overwhelming sense of authority. "Who are you?" the Monster King called out loud. He was still standing next to the pillar. Gu Shizhou finally expressed her contempt. "You have pushed my disciple to the edge only to see me here today. Now that I am already here, why do you have to play dumb? Then you must be the creator of the universe." "Just as you can see, I am." The crowd gasped in disbelief as soon as they heard the brief exchange. They had never seen the creator of the universe before, nor had they felt her strong presence. Her aura was so intimidating that one could hardly stand straight when she was present. Some of them quickly fell to their knees to worship her. Soon enough, the rest followed. Most of the people in the square were already kneeling and touching their heads on the ground as an act of respect. Meanwhile, the Monster King kept his composure. "So you claim to be the creator of the universe, but do you have any proof?" he asked scornfully. Gu Shizhou raised her eyebrow at him. Before she could say anything, Fan Qianshi was already defending her. "I can prove very well that she is my master." Sponsored content. The Monster King had it all planned out. "You? I can assume that this is all but a trick, made up by you and Wu Qianyan to cover up the fact that you have killed the creator of the universe." He then gazed at Gu Shizhou intently. "It is easy to prove that you are the creator of the universe. You just need to defeat me in a battle. Otherwise, I will sentence you to death for impersonating the Divine Lord. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsor's game to support us." It was his final act in his orchestrated master plan. Sponsored content. Gu Shizhou teased him. "Seems like you need a lesson." "Humph. How can an imposter be powerful enough to teach me a lesson?" The Monster King bitterly dismissed her words. He took a look at Wu Qianyan, who was still tied to the pillar. Apparently, losing a chain did not bring her freedom. She was still very securely positioned on the scaffold. At this point, she was so awfully sliced that she was basically unrecognizable. Meanwhile, her body still twitched and trembled in agony. She kept making inaudible utterances as if moaning for help. Fortunately for her, the executioner was injured on the platform and could not get himself up. "Get me another executioner and keep the punishment going." The Monster King had a smug face. "I am already here. Do you really need to continue torturing her?" Gu Shizhou asked. Sponsored content. "Certainly." The Monster King then wickedly said, "You have not been able to prove your identity yet, so her punishment should not be mitigated. So, you will only let her go when I defeat you, right?" "Absolutely." "Very well then." Gu Shizhou gave her sleeves a flick and said confidently, "Let us begin." As soon as she made the announcement, she went straight for the Monster King without wasting any time. She was already launching her first strike. Sponsored content. The Monster King was slightly taken by surprise. He thought that he would be able to trigger Gu Shizhou into a mad fury. Never had he thought that she would handle his sarcasm so calmly. Perhaps, the creator of the universe knew how to keep calm at all times, he thought. She must have been through enough to keep her composure under all circumstances. He assumed that she must have been acting like she did not care about her servant, so there was no point for him to punish her any longer. Therefore, he decided to go against her will, and kept the punishment going. He needed to make sure that Wu Qianyan distracted her, so that she would be defeated more easily. With that in mind, he made a command to his men to execute the punishment in a more tortuous manner, while he was still battling with Gu Shizhou. The executioners were briefed beforehand, so as soon as the Monster King commanded, they would slash the body parts where Wu Qianyan was the most sensitive. Their knives were all cleansed with salt water before cutting through her flesh. The amount of pain that the monster princess had to suffer was of an inhuman scale. She could not handle the torment and passed out right away. Unfortunately, it did not take long before the executioner splashed her with a bucket of salt water to keep her awake. She could not help but scream in agony with heart-wrenching cries. The Monster King only regarded her cries as sweet melodies to his ears. To his surprise, Gu Shizhou seemed completely unaffected. Her moves were all graceful and smooth without the slightest hesitation. Her martial arts were original and authentically hers, so the Monster King had no idea how to brand her style of fighting. After a dozen rounds, the Monster King started to regret his decision. Gu Zijia's spiritual power was unexpectedly higher than he expected. Every move of hers was charged with immense power. In addition to that, she also kept dazzling her opponent with many different tactics. At first, she started attacking him with a long whip. But all of a sudden, she introduced her sword into the fight. Occasionally, she would use a spell and turn the ground into a desert filled with sand to trap the Monster King. Usually, practitioners would only choose one element to practice their kung fu. For example, it would either be gold or fire. Very few people could master the spiritual power of two different elements. Gu Shizhou was surely an exception. Her moves were very complex, formed by all 5 elements: gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. Therefore, it was difficult to catch up with the unpredictability of her kung fu. The Monster King kept backing up, almost to the edge of the platform. Sponsored content while fighting. The Monster King could not help but curse at his sister. The creator of the universe was much stronger than what he was told. Based on the way things were going, he would most probably be defeated at the end. He intended to win the battle, but the truth was the very opposite of what he had hoped for. As expected, he was slowly losing. A vine suddenly emerged from the ground and entangled his feet. While he was busy freeing himself, he did not see a shining bat that was coming his way. With a swift swing, he was hit right on his waist and suffered an agonizing pain. Pale and defeated, he quickly shifted backward and surrounded himself in his troops. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsor's game to support us. He called out icily, "I have underestimated what this imposter can do. However, that does not change the fact that you are merely impersonating the Divine Lord. Take her down. I have so many questions for her." Sponsored content. He waved his hand as a signal to summon the troops that were assigned to ambush her. He was worried that he might get hurt in the sea of arrows, so he immediately set up a wizardry barrier for his own protection. To his utter surprise, not one single arrow was launched. The dramatic wave of flying arrows that he had planned did not happen at all. There was nothing but dead silence in the square. Gu Shizhou quickly found her way to Fan Qianshi. Although he was secured in a protective barrier, she could not be sure that the barrier would not be breached. If Fan Qianshi were caught, she would really be in a bad position. Puzzled, Gu Shizhou did not quite understand the silence that fell on the square. She knew that the Monster King was trying to summon his men. Indeed, she managed to intimidate quite an amount of troops, but she did not manage to feed them all with intimidation. Surely, there would still be some remaining soldiers who were loyal to the Monster King and would carry out their missions, regardless. They should have at least launched some arrows. There should be at least 1,000 arrows or 100 of men coming her way. To her astonishment, there was none. Had something happened to the troops? Sponsored content. At this moment, she could only think of Difui. She wondered if he had secretly defeated all of the soldiers. Nonetheless, his kung fu had a limit too. He couldn't defeat so many people in such a short time. The Monster King was equally baffled. The silence was followed by his cries of anger. "Move!" Only his closest guards answered, but the secret troops that he had in place remained unresponsive. The Monster King knew that something was not quite right. Just when he was about to send someone to check it out, the executioner's sudden exclaim distracted him. "What are you shouting for?" The Monster King was irritated. Sponsored content. He turned around and was dumbstruck by what he saw on the pillar. There was a flood dragon on the pillar with hardly any flesh left on its body. Only its bones remained. A striking red crown sat on the dragon's head. The Monster King could easily recognize the crown. The flood dragon was Yao Tingting. The crown had very well proven that the body was his sister's. The Monster King and his family were descendants of the flood dragon line. As soon as they obtained their human forms, they would not easily reveal their original appearance. Only under two conditions would they be revealed. Either they were willing to show themselves, or they were dead. The Monster King was so shocked that he was unable to speak. Ting Ting, he called out blankly. Need to say, his desperate calls were unanswered. The monster princess was already dead. Panicked, the executioner fell to the ground and begged for forgiveness. Your Majesty, this is not of my doing. I did not know that she was our princess. Bloody bastard. The Monster King stared at the executioner with his bloodshot eyes before giving him a deadly strike. Flames started emerging from his palm as he aimed a fiery strike at the group of executioners in the crowd, and immediately turned them into balls of fire. These people had become victims of the Monster King's fury. Who did this? Who did this? The Monster King snarled a threat. The entire stage was shaking as a result of his thunderous voice. He gave the flood dragon's body a quick examination and found a seal. It acted as an inhibitor to prevent Yao Tingting from revealing her original self, even when she was critically injured. If Yao Tingting had been able to show her original self earlier, the Monster King would not have committed such terrible blunders. Hence, the person behind these plots had every outcome planned out. Sponsored content. The Monster King was finally reminded of the culprit. Go to Jinxiu Palace and get me the man, he sternly said. That is unnecessary. A man could be heard chuckling. His voice was loud and clear enough for everyone in the square to hear him. Baffled, the crowd turned to the voice. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsor's game to support us. From the darkest corner of the square, a group of people suddenly entered in a single file. Their attire clearly belonged to the warriors of the Monster Kingdom, each carrying a distinctly crafted armor. Above all, there were two exquisitely decorated sedan chairs, one in red and another in blue. The one in red was embellished with the motif of the sun, while the other was made with stars that brightly stood out against the deep blue background. Sponsored content. Both sedan chairs emerged from a layer optical haze that added a tint of mystery to their abrupt entrance. The embellishment of the bright sun was so vividly made that people could not keep their eyes too long on the sedan. The blue sedan, on the other hand, completely brought out the vast emptiness in the night sky that was fathomless, deep and distant. Gasped in horror, the Monster King immediately realized that something was gravely wrong. He recognized the soldiers at once. Those were the ones that he had secretly arranged for behind closed doors. Earlier he had tried to summon them, but there was no reaction. But now all of a sudden, they entered with two mysterious, odd-looking sedan chairs. He could not help but wonder who was behind the commotion. The laughter from before reminded him of the celestial officer that he very much trusted. It seems these people had interrupted the fight. Sponsored content. Gu Shijiu retreated and found herself next to Fan Qianshi. The boy was still badly injured. Even with some proper dressings on his wounds, he still could not find his strength to stand. Nonetheless, he was clearly delighted as soon as he saw Gu Shijiu, but the moment of joy faded almost instantaneously as he apologized. Master, I am of no use for you. Gu Shijiu put a finger on her lips to stop him from undervaluing his presence. Don't give up now. You are still young. Whilst talking, she quietly transferred some of her spiritual power to Fan Qianshi to help him recover better. Meanwhile, she watched as the drama unveiled in the square. Sponsored content. Yang Jintian, are you rebelling against me? The Monster King asked in fury. Yang Jintian was the leader that the group of soldiers that emerged. Icily, he only responded with a stern look. A voice recording shell was then presented to play a small part of a conversation between two parties. It was loud and clear enough to be shared with everyone present. Gu Shijiu soon recognized the voices, and so did everyone else. It was a conversation between the Monster King and Di Fui. The conversation was about the rescue plan that the Monster King had previously proposed to Di Fui, and the ways that he could save his dying sister. Clearly, The best solution that the Monster King could come up with was to sacrifice another innocent woman's life for his beloved sister. In order to gain the celestial officer's help, the Monster King had generously shared with him the details of the public execution in the square. The creator of the universe was the ultimate target that he aimed for. Once he had had enough with her, he did not mind sharing the woman with the celestial officer. Certainly, the Monster King was aware of Yao Tingting's misconduct, though not entirely. His arrogance and bias towards his sister had selfishly dismissed the many lives lost, by claiming that every living soul in the Monster King was born to serve him. As a group of slaves, these lives were not even worth mentioning. He did not care if they lived or died. As soon as the word spread, every audience in the square gasped in utter disbelief. People were indignant with his cruelty and the injustice that he simply dismissed. Gu Shijie watched as the Monster King lost his composure. She could not help but feel sorry for him. How could he allow himself to expose the darkest secrets that should have remained kept? All of his words were now turned against himself. Sponsored content, on the other hand. Di Fui was indeed a maverick genius, judging from the methods that he had used to lure the Monster King into confessing his own bias and indirectly, his crimes that would spark hatred. The man had got a meticulous mind for such deliberate plans. It was unbelievable that he was only a 22-year-old man. The Monster King was alarmed as soon as the recording started. It's made up. It is all made up. I have never said so. This is all but a trick by the man in the sedan to defame me. With a swift leap, he lunged himself towards Yang Jintian in a desperate attempt to remove the voice recording shell from his hand. He needed to wipe away the proof. He was swift, but not as swift as Gu Shijie. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsors game to support us. Gu Zijie's teleportation gave her a massive edge. What are you afraid of? I have heard some parts of the conversation with my own ears. Are you too timid to admit your fault? Sponsored content. The Monster King said nothing. Yao Xingye, don't you panic just yet. There is more. Yang Jintian mocked him before playing the next clip. This time, it was between a man and a woman. The voice of the woman actually belonged to Yao Tingting, the monster princess. Di Fui was the man in the clip. The conversation happened in the prison cell not long ago. The people were outraged even further by her crimes. Each year, the number of missing people would escalate to an unprecedented high, which included many gentlemen and ladies from some of the most powerful families. Many of them turned to the Monster King for help. He promised them to investigate the matter, and in return he pointed them arrows to foreign people of other kingdoms. The Animal Kingdom, the Celestial Kingdom, and even the Underworld had all been accused. The accusation also marked the beginning of many wars, thus losing more lives. To their surprise, Yao Tingting was the one who was solely responsible for all of the crimes. Even more to their disbelief, their loved ones had suffered inhumane torment before their demise. Most of the Monster King's closest guards had lost their loved ones. The Monster King vowed in fervor to avenge the fallen by attacking another kingdom, which he accused of committing the crime. In return for the king's favor, these men pledged their loyalty to him. Now that the truth was revealed, these armed men finally realized the Monster King's selfish intentions. It was never about revenge. They were only used as his pawns to conquer more territory. Sponsored content. Fake. It is all made up. Yao Xingye watched as his guards and men lost faith in him by distancing themselves. Panicked, he turned the facts around and denied all of his doings. He pointed at the celestial officer and accused him of making up stories. Aren't you going to admit any of your doings? A gentle voice from the red sedan responded. The curtain was pushed away, thus revealing a woman in red who slowly emerged from within. Her eyebrows were perfectly arched, giving her face an edgy touch. She had a stern look on her face as she gazed into the distance. Her red dress was beautifully draped onto her slim and slender figure. With every step, she moved with elegance. The woman was a rare beauty, with unparalleled looks and effortless grace. She let her hair down, but that did not shelter her pointy ears that were sharply edged. At her back, 9 fox tails could be seen swaying gently. Gu Shizhou gasped in astonishment as soon as she realized that the woman was actually the nine-tailed fox from the Tushan family. She roughly recalled that Tushan family used to rule the monster kingdom before she became dormant. Things changed when she woke up as the territory now belonged to the flood dragons. Her brief research revealed that the Tushan family was banished and killed overnight, about 30 centuries ago. Yao Xingye, of the flood dragon family, used to be the greatest guardian of the Fox King. He made solemn promises, committing to seek revenge for the Tushan family after that murderous night, and initiated a series of investigations that linked him all the way to the animal kingdom. He then led a group of warriors to fight with the enemies and killed the murderers. With great success, came his throne as the Monster King, as he took over the Tushan family. The Tushan family held a respected name in the Monster Kingdom, known publicly as the royal family. If they were not banished, Yao Xingye would never have become the king. Hence, he skillfully courted the people by appealing to the search for the descendants of the Tushan family. Sponsored content just when everyone thought that the Tushan family no longer existed. The beauty made a surprise entrance that took everyone's breath away. The Fox family was naturally born with an irresistible charm, even more so with the woman's attractive beauty. She entered with great vigor as if an empress that had come to rule. In awe, the audience of the square fell to their knees. Meanwhile, Yao Xingye could no longer contain the surge of his anxiety. He had been trying to kill every survivor of the massacre of the Tushan family. He thought he had killed them all, but he was wrong. The woman gazed at Yao Xingye and said, "Yao Xingye, you defied the king and started a rebellion to end the lives of the Tushan family. We shall talk about this later. By the way, didn't you say that the clips were all made up? Let me show you what I have brought today to prove you wrong." She took out a pile of documents with clear indications of all the people that died in the hands of Yao Tingting, including the details of their death. These papers were spread amongst the crowd, so that everyone could see the proofs. Also, she had witnesses available. She waved her hand to signal the entrance of a group of servants. These people had all served Yao Tingting before, so they had all witnessed her murderous acts. At a loss for words, the Monster King did not prepare for the detailed revelation that left him completely speechless. Most of the people were already boiling with fury and frustration. If it were not for the Monster King's kung fu, they would have already attacked him. At this point, Yao Xingye knew that his reign had passed. He took a swift leap into the air, and made a jump towards the blue sedan chair. "Tian Maoan, show yourself." A strike was launched mid-air, and since the Monster King's strength was unstoppable, the attack was certainly destructive. Other than Gu Shizhou, no one else would able to withstand the strike. Nonetheless, Gu Shizhou was too distracted by Fan Qianshi. When she saw the attack being launched, it was already too late for her to change anything. She thought that Di Fui would not be powerful enough to defend himself. The worst that could happen would be seeing the sedan being shattered into pieces, along with the man. The Monster King went in with full force, only to be stopped right before the sedan. The blue sedan remained in one piece. Yao Xingye, on the other hand, was the one who suffered the impact. He staggered and moved back in retreat, not long before he spat out a mouthful of blood. He steadied himself and looked at the sedan in clear defiance. "Tian Maoan, what have you done to me?" The curtains were pushed aside, allowing the man to walk out of the sedan. He was wearing a set of plain white robes, equipped with a mask of ghostly features to cover his face. The mask was able to conceal his identity, but not his otherworldly aura. His powerful presence would leave an unforgettable impression on anyone. The Monster King's followers were the first ones to recognize the man. He was the celestial officer who recently emerged as an important figure, Tian Maoan. The man was not entirely friendly. He sometimes behaved differently, so no one dared to get too close to him. However, he was not intimidating. Hence, the people of the Monster Kingdom were not afraid of him. Occasionally, they would even put him in trouble on purpose just to test him. Things had changed as the man was now equipped with unprecedented power. Certainly, His Grace had also managed to capture the attention of many women. Sponsored content. Gu Shizhou silently judged him. This man came with many different identities. As far as she was concerned, the man was referred to as Feng Jiai or Di Fui. but now he was Tian Maoan. She could no longer tell which one was real. She took a look at Di Fui and then looked back to the foxy woman. Apparently, they were a team. Even without any proof, Gu Shizhou already knew that this was all but a great plan that Di Fui had come up with to set the Monster King in a trap. Each and every arrangement was carefully planned. He made an appearance with the foxy woman of the Tushan family, because he needed to help her rebuild her family's royal legacy. Gu Shizhou had, once again, unknowingly contributed to a small part of his great plan. She took her contribution as a favor for his kindness in saving her and her servants' lives. From now on, it would only be natural for the foxy woman to regain her title as the heir to the throne. On the other hand, Yao Xingye had completely fallen into the trap that Di Fui had set up for him, so there was nothing he could do in his defense. Defeated, he was caught and held captive. The great revelation was a show that Gu Shizhou thoroughly enjoyed. However, with nothing left for her to see, she decided to leave with Fan Qianshi. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsor's game to support us. Chapter 28:13. Master, shall we go? Sponsored content. Perhaps Fan Qianshi was numb from sitting down too long. He could not keep his balance as he stood up and fell right into Gu Zijia's arms. She quickly supported him by the waist to help him stand up straight. Fan Qianshi was mesmerized by her captivating scent that one could only notice when in close proximity to her. It was as refreshing as the sweet morning dew. Back in the day when Gu Shizhou taught him kung fu, they would get close enough with each other for him to get a whiff of her scent. He missed that. Gu Shizhou had been pushing him away for some time now, so he never had the chance to get close to her again. Hence, the proximity this time around stirred his restless heart, making him reluctant to leave. Gu Shizhou wanted to let go of him, but noticed that his body was slanted to one side. Puzzled, she continued to support him. Sponsored content. Fan Qianshi was happy to be with her. However, he looked away for a moment and caught Di Fui staring at him. With a smirk, Di Fui looked at him as if he knew what the boy was thinking. Defensively, Fan Qianshi felt an urge to keep away from the man. Master, shall we go? Gu Shizhou refused to stay any longer, either. Let's go. Divine Lord, I have something to say. Di Fui approached Gu Shizhou to speak to her. Sponsored content. Di Fui gazed at her intently before continuing. Divine Lord, I would like to thank you for your help. You have misled him to think that your power has been deteriorated, thus luring him one step closer into the trap and exposing his crimes. You have done a great deal for the Monster Kingdom, so I would like to invite you to stay for a feast. Divine Lord, I heard that you are the one who came up with the plan, which in turn provides me with an opportunity to rebuild my family's legacy. I, Tu Shanying, would like to thank you for your kindness. The nine-tailed fox gracefully approached Gu Shizhou and bowed before her as a token of appreciation. Divine Lord, would you care to stay for a feast? Your presence will be a blessing for the people of the Monster Kingdom. With such an invitation, there was no room for rejection. Gu Shizhou thought about their invitations and could immediately understand that it was yet another plan from Di Fui to achieve two things in one go. Firstly, the fact about the deterioration of her power should remain a secret. He made it public that they were joint forces, so that no one would have any doubts about the condition of her health. Secondly, he was trying to make her choose a side. As the creator of the universe, her recognition was needed to help Tu Shanying become the next ruler of the Monster Kingdom. Being the most respected figure on Earth, her recommendation would come in handy if Tu Shanying chose to ascend the throne. Hence, Di Fui's plan was perfect for both intentions. Her secret would remain a secret, while Tu Shanying would take control of the kingdom. Nonetheless, Gu Shizhou did not like the plan very much. She did not like it when someone became too calculative about her involvement. She also refused to taste the fruit of someone else's success. Moreover, she barely knew Tu Shanying. In fact, she did not know Di Fui any better either. She did not even know the man's real name. All things considered, she gave them a polite smile as she rejected their invitation. Thank you, but a feast is not something I fancy. Sponsored content, she immediately drew a line between both parties. Clearly, she had no intention to side Tu Shannying. She glanced at Tu Shannying, who now looked slightly pale at the rejection. With a gentle tap on her shoulder, Gu Shizhou politely said, "There is no need for you to feel dejected. I will always help those who are capable and honorable. Perhaps we will get a chance to sit down for a drink someday." She did not look at Di Fui again before she swiftly teleported away along with Fan Qianshi. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsor's game to support us. No one in the world had the same power as Gu Shizhou. Who else was capable of disappearing in an instant? Her superpower had filled the crowd with awe. Sponsored content. Some of the people quickly bent their knees and uttered, "Goodbye, Divine Lord." Di Fui caught himself contemplating, while gently tapping on his bamboo flute in his palm. There was hardly anything that he could not solve, but he had no idea why she rejected the invitation. Was she annoyed? He wondered. How did your power increase almost twofold? Back in Tianin Valley, Gu Shizhou was trying to find out more about Fan Qianshi's latest developments. Silently, Fan Qianshi remained on the ground, kneeling. Sponsored content. Speak. Gu Shizhou had no patience for the boy. Scared, Fan Qianshi guiltily confessed, "Qianyin's life was at stake, leaving me no room for any delays, so I went for the most stupid idea. After leaving the restaurant, I ventured into the forbidden land of illusions, and took an illusionary fruit." His statement ended in a stammer. Gu Shizhou answered somewhat sarcastically, "Although the fruit can increase your power, the effect will only last temporarily for 4 hours. When it is over, your nervous system will be greatly damaged, and it might restrict your spiritual power to only half of what you used to possess. Haven't I told you that it is not worth the price? Have you forgotten it all?" I have not forgotten your words. I was desperate for a way out. So what if you managed to level up your power? Could you defeat Yao Xingye? What you have done completely puts your own health at stake. Why didn't you think properly before you acted? Did you really think that I would let Qianyin die? Sponsored content. Fan Qianshi had never seen her so frustrated. "I now know my mistake," he timidly said, without even looking at her. Gu Shizhou glared at him. "You did this on purpose, didn't you? You did this because we fought." Panicked, Fan Qianshi broke out in cold sweat. "I dare not. I did not act rashly because we had a fight. I was only worried that you were not in good condition to fight them all alone. I only wanted to help. It is my fault. In fact, I did not help at all. Instead, I became another burden of yours. I am sorry for my mistake. I deserve to be punished." He continued to kneel while being drenched in a cold sweat. Even Wu Qianyan joined him to beg for Gu Zijia's forgiveness. Gu Shizhou observed them both and continued, "Fan Qianshi, I once told you that the use of illusionary fruit was forbidden, and yet you did the direct opposite of what I said. Your punishment is unavoidable, though I can sympathize with your intention. Find your way into the ice cave in the hills, and stay in isolation for a month." She then threw him a bottle of medicine and said, "Use this to treat your injuries." She took another look at Wu Qianyan. "You are going to?" Relieved, Fan Qianshi quickly thanked her for her forgiveness. He knew that the ice cave was the most suitable place for him to recover for the time being. Since his punishment was assigned to him based on his needs, he knew that she cared. Wu Qianyan was relieved too. She was happy with the arrangement. She had always wanted to be closely associated with Fan Qianshi, but the interaction was not mutual. The month-long stay in the cave was the chance that she had been looking forward to. After assigning appropriate tasks to her disciples, Gu Shizhou finally had time for herself. She went to her treasure room and placed all of her items back where they belonged. Those were the things that Yao Xingye had unapologetically taken without her consent. Sponsored content. Some of the items were equipped with magical powers, which were required to support the wizardry barrier that kept the valley safe. She could not simply keep them away in her storage. This place used to be a safe place, but the raid on her home changed her mind. Before she went away, she added a few more barriers to increase its security. It had been a long day for her, so she was actually a little tired. No one knew herself better than she did. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsor's game to support us. Although Gu Shijie was dominating the battle against Yao Xingye, she was not entirely comfortable during the fight. Her body had never stopped aching. During the encounter, she realized that another visit to the glacier was inevitable. Sponsored content: Gu Shijie could no longer locate the glacier even though she used the same path as before. She remembered the way, but it did not lead her to the desired destination. For a moment, she wondered if a wizardry barrier hid the glacier. Nonetheless, she dismissed the thought quickly because no wizardry barrier could possibly escape her eyes. If the glacier had been in a wizardry barrier, she would have easily noticed it before. She lingered around the hills where she had originally exited the place. However, even after a thorough search, she still could not find her way in. Alas, she gave up. Sponsored content: Gu Shijie suspected that the glacier was either mobile or would only appear at a particular time. Since she did not have other information, she had no hope of returning to the glacier for cultivation. Could Di Fui be the help she needed? But even if he could help, would he agree to help? The man was beyond calculative, so Gu Shijie was slightly reluctant to meet him or to have anything to do with him. She decided to let things flow naturally. There was not much time left for her anyway, so it did not matter anymore if she got to live another day or two. Her years of cultivation had trained her to reconcile herself to different circumstances. Life or death did not matter too much. Meanwhile, the magnificent views in the mountains made her linger a little bit more in the woods. The place was rather quiet today as only animals were present in the solitary woodland. Not a single woodsman was around. Sponsored content: deep within the valley, there was a garden of blossoming flowers. The hills were ablaze with tiny white blossoms. From afar, the entire area of white blossoms looked like a large fluffy cloud. It surely was a feast for the eyes. Gu Shijie excitedly walked towards the land of white flowers for a pleasant stroll. However, a sudden gentle sound of running water caught her attention, and she hurried towards the sound of the river. White flower petals stayed afloat on the gurgling water, like flocks of white ducklings flowing down the stream. At the end of the stream, there was a natural lake. Strangely enough, these petals were gathered around a dark hole in the middle of the pond. Apparently, the running water was directed to flow right into the hole. The water was as clear as crystal without any sorts of contamination. As it was rare to find such a clean lake, Gu Shijie looked as if she had just found a hidden treasure. Surely, she would not leave without first dipping in the water. There was no one around, not even an animal. Hence, it was the perfect place for her to go for skinny dipping. She removed her robes and went into the lake. The water was slightly chilly, but the cold never bothered her anyway. She followed the flow and started swimming across the pool. Much to her surprise, she realized that the spiritual energy of the water was even stronger than in the Tianyin Valley. Immediately convinced, she decided that it was the place for her cultivation. The lake was a deep one, like a bottomless pit. She used her spiritual power to sense the presence of any ferocious beings that were hidden in the unseen depths. But there was nothing that caught her attention. It was clear to her that this was the right place for her. The minor inconvenience of the lake was its clear water. Her naked body could be seen entirely from above the water. Fortunately, there was no one around. So, she stayed submerged in the water with her legs crossed and cast spells on her fingertips as soon as she began her cultivation. Sponsored content: the serenity did not last long before a sudden splash of water caused the water around her to swill. Astonished, she quickly looked around. Someone could be seen rising dramatically from the depths of the pool. However, she could only see the person's silky black hair from the back. The person noticed her presence and quickly turned around. Their eyes met abruptly. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsor's game to support us. Both of them examined one another, But Gu Shijie was the first to panic. The intruder was none other than Di Fui. Sponsored content. Gu Shijie never thought they would meet in the wild. More importantly, she was naked. She quickly kicked and splashed water onto his face in order to distract him and cause a small turbulence in the water. Gu Shijie seized the window of opportunity to return to the land. Her robes were automatically directed to her, and soon, she was effortlessly dressed. The entire escape took place rather quickly. Hence, she staggered a little to her feet when she landed. Other than that, everything went smoothly. Nonetheless, her heart continued to pound in her chest. Being seen naked by another man could be awkward to deal with. She wished she could just disappear right at that moment, but the man already emerged from the water. His intense gaze never left her. Leaving would only make her look defeated. It was not an option for the creator of the universe, who should keep her composure at all times. Why are you here? Gu Shijie returned his gaze but was soon embarrassed by what she saw. Sponsored content. The man was naked from the waist up. Although only his head and shoulders were above the water. The clear water was no shield to the rest of his lean, muscular body. There was only a thin layer of undergarment that covered him from his waist to his ankles. Normally, his muscular body was completely hidden when he was dressed. He usually looked like a man of poise and grace. She never thought that he was actually a very well-built man, physically. The stature of his body was beyond perfect. Every inch of his muscle was firm and shapely, contributing to his unworldly beauty and effortless grace. Especially now that he was casually undressed with wet hair clinging onto his naked skin. It was a rather breathtaking view. Di Fui finally recognized her. I did not know you were here. We seem destined to meet. She was unsure if destiny was a blessing or a disaster. Nevertheless, Gu Shijie emphasized her question again sternly. You have yet to answer my question. Sponsored content. Di Fui took it easy and slowly approached the shore. Divine Lord, I was here first. I should be the one directing the question at you. He was right. He did not emerge from the depths of the pool on purpose, only to catch her naked. In the blink of an eye, he was already by the shore. Perplexed, she took a few steps back. What are you doing? I am getting out of the water. Do you really think that I will be in the water for long? Droplets of water continued to linger on his supple skin, which sparkled like diamonds under the light. Just then, Gu Shijie realized that it was inappropriate for her to stare. Therefore, she turned around to avoid looking at him. Get dressed. I have something to ask you. Di Fui hesitated a little while trying to get dressed. In amazement, the view of Gu Shijie's back caught his attention. Sure, he answered without any resistance, which was rare. Sponsored content. It did not take long for him to get fully dressed like the gentleman that she used to know. However, his complexion was unusually paler than his healthy self. Water continued to drip from his hair, which somewhat affected his sleek outlook. He wanted to dry his hair with a spell, but Gu Shijie thought that he was taking a little too long. Without any time to waste, she cast a cleaning spell to dry him up in an instant. Her act obviously caught him by surprise. Meanwhile, Gu Shijie sat on the top of a big rock. Shouldn't you be helping the two family to succeed to the monster kingdom? Why are you here all of a sudden? Di Fui put a casual smile on his face and avoided her question. Did you ask me to stay only to ask me about that? He did not answer any of her questions. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsors game to support us. Gu Shijie was obviously annoyed. Being the most respected figure on Earth, people would always hold her in high regard and answer her every question without hesitation. However, the man was an exception. He was polite but never ceased to keep a distance from her. He never let his guard down with her. Sponsored content. Reluctant to waste another minute arguing, Gu Shijie went straight to her point. Where is the glacier? Where can I find the entrance? Di Fui still gazed at her intently. I thought you were going to punish me, he slowly answered. Gu Shijie did not quite understand. After all, I have seen you in the water, by accident. Utterly embarrassed, that was the last topic that she wanted to talk about. Sponsored content. As you said, it was an accident. You are so young, so I shall not be bothered. Don't you require any form of compensation? Di Fuyi's intention was questionable. What kind of compensation? Gu Shizhou asked him back, curiously. Soon, she resorted to a solution. Of course, you do need to compensate for my loss. Tell me about the entrance to the glacier, and that will be all, she offered. She was reluctant to lower herself to the level of a young boy. Di Fuyi continued to observe her. That is all. Bewildered, Gu Shizhou did not expect him to offer his compensation so eagerly. She started to think of him as a decent man. Her impression of him had certainly changed a little, but it was a good chance for her to get what she wanted. If you really feel sorry, you may take me personally to the entrance of the glacier. It would be great if you could share with me the rules about the place, she added another request. Sponsored content. Di Fuyi was unimpressed. All of a sudden, the water in the pool could be seen bubbling from within the depths. Panicked, he grasped Gu Shizhou by her wrist and urged, "This place is not safe. We need to go." As Gu Shizhou was still perplexed, he was too fast for her to keep up in an instant. Hence, she was literally pulled away. Hey, what are we running away from? The answer lay in the water. Soon the pool exploded violently. A gloom of violence and grudge immediately blotted out the sky, thus turning the bright afternoon sky into a state of dim, hazy glow. Gu Shizhou looked behind and saw a giant, black shadow emerging from the pool right away. Darkness fell upon them. The only light was actually coming from the head of the giant shadow. Sponsored content. Fortunately, Gu Zijia's night vision helped her to see better in the dark. She noticed that the giant figure greatly resembled a dragon with pitch-black scales layered on every inch of its skin. Though black, its scales remained glossy and its eyes remained bright, like a pair of lights that flickered inconsistently in the dark. Could it be a dragon? No, it must be a candle dragon, she thought. The candle dragon was a mythical creature from very ancient times. It was neither a celestial being nor a demon, but its character was nothing short of violent. The slightest disturbance could result in the total destruction of the entire city. Gu Shizhou never thought it had lain hidden beneath the water. Before she went into the pool, she first made sure that there was nothing around, so this came as a surprise to her. Could the deterioration of her spiritual power have affected the precision? She had questions, but it was not the time to ask them. At least, Gu Shizhou no longer depended on Di Fuyi to run on foot. Instead, she chose to teleport. The candle dragon was a violent, ferocious being as the result of its birth from the essence of heaven and earth. It had been around for at least tens of thousands of years. If she still had her full power, the candle dragon would not pose any risk to her at all. However, her current circumstances left her no chance to fight. She had to run away as fast as she could. Fortunately, nothing was able to surpass the speed of her teleportation skill thus far. Very soon, they were already 100 miles away from the pool. But even from that far, they could still hear the creature howling in protest. The whole ground shook along with the intensity of the sound. The candle dragon was a moody creature. Once there were no disturbances in sight, it would usually quiet down and restore tranquility to the land. This was what Gu Shizhou had expected it to do. Therefore, after traveling hundreds of miles, Gu Shizhou wanted to take a rest. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsor's game to support us. Since Gu Shizhou had stopped to catch her breath, Di Fuyi immediately commented, "Not here. It will still come for us." Sponsored content. The sky above them was now already blotted out by a giant piece of dark shadow. It was the candle dragon again. Gu Shizhou was dumbstruck. Why did the candle dragon insist on the pursuit? Whatever the reason, it looked like she had to teleport again. However, her body was a little weak to withstand the rapid exhaustion of her spiritual power. Therefore, after a few rounds, she started to suffer from blackouts. Before she collapsed, she quickly grabbed Di Fuyi's sleeves to steady her from swaying her body. Oddly enough, the candle dragon was still coming after them, like a stubborn maggot. Could there be an end for this pursuit? Gu Shizhou took a deep breath before continuing to teleport away. But Di Fui would not let her. "You cannot keep doing this. I will take over from here," he announced while carrying her in his arms. Swiftly, they dived into the ground with his ground drilling. Gu Shijiu patiently followed. She was familiar with the ground drilling now. Even the routes reminded her of their last trip together. The path seemed to lead them all the way to the glacier. Although they did not enter the ground from the same starting point, the route remained the same. Sponsored content. At this point, Gu Shijiu was absolutely exhausted. Blood rushed through her veins in an unsteady flow. She could no longer keep herself awake. Hence, she closed her eyes for a short nap in his arms. As expected, they emerged from the ground into the glacier. However, the candle dragon was capable of ground drilling, so it went into the underground in pursuit of them for a while. It soon gave up, as the routes that Di Fui used were unusual and hard to follow. Also, the puzzling spell that he used along the way managed to confuse the creature, and eventually left it far behind. It was the same icy peaks and the same compaction of snow that made Gu Shijiu feel at home for a moment. Even the vortex of chilly winds was all too familiar. Di Fui tripped when they first arrived and almost threw Gu Shijiu out of his arms. Luckily, she was awake now and was alert of her surroundings. "I can walk by myself." Gu Shijiu struggled to stand. She shuddered in the cold as soon as she got onto her feet. "Hold this." A red umbrella was offered to shield her from the snow. It was the same act of kindness from before, and Gu Shijiu happily accepted the offer. "Are you hurt too?" she asked. Sponsored content. Pale and drawn. Di Fui looked just as weak as she did. "Did the candle dragon do this to you?" She made a guess. Di Fui nodded. The candle dragon was not even supposed to be there, was it? "The pool leads all the way out to Earthsea. It used to be there," Di Fui answered accordingly. Gu Shijiu knew about Earthsea. It was buried deep within the Earth's core, so it was known as the Earthsea for carrying a lot of water in the ground. Regular seawater was in crystal clear tint of blue, whereas the water that came from the Earthsea was as dark as ink, with a constant temperature of boiling water. Nothing on Earth could possibly survive in the harsh environment. The location of the Earthsea was unknown. She remembered clearly that she had never been there. More accurately speaking, she had never found the place yet. Sponsored content. Surprisingly, the pool turned out to be the entrance of Earthsea. When she saw him, he must have just emerged from Earthsea. "How did you come across its path?" Gu Shijiu was impressed by his bravery. He dared to fight a candle dragon alone. Di Fui took a black egg out of his storage bag and answered, "For this." Gu Shijiu was dumbstruck. She finally knew why the candle dragon had been tirelessly pursuing them. The man had stolen its egg. It all made sense to her now. She observed the egg, which was almost the size of a basket. It was glossy on its black surface, as though associated with a circle of light around it. "Are you going to hatch the egg and use the little creature as your majestic pet?" The candle dragon was considered as a mythical creature, which was absolutely difficult to be subjected to domestication. It was almost impossible to be tamed and trained when it was fully grown, which led Gu Shijiu to think that the egg was for domestication. Di Fui put the egg down on the snow. "No, not this one." "What is it about then?" "I heard it tastes good. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsor's game to support us. Gu Shijiu did not know what to say, as what he said made absolutely no sense. She had to talk him out of the crazy idea. "I honestly think that this is a reckless waste." Sponsored content. She never thought of the man as someone who ate so greedily. He would risk his life to dive into the core of the pool just for an egg that he wanted to eat. When something is properly used, it is never a waste, no matter how valuable it sounds. Di Fui took the egg in his hands and asked, "Speaking of which, how many ways do you know to cook an egg?" He gazed at Gu Shijiu for an answer. "About that I know nothing." She was slightly embarrassed by her lack of knowledge of culinary skills. As a divine being, she was well respected wherever she went, even though she hardly remembered anything that happened before her extensively long sleep. She never had to ask for anything, as people would always offer her everything. Moreover, her survival no longer depended on food. It did not matter if she ate or not. Even so, she would still visit every corner of the world in search of gastronomic delights, not for survival, but for the satisfaction of good food that helped her immerse herself in the mundane world. Sponsored content. She could easily name the good food in all 6 worlds. However, she was never a cook. She turned the question to him instead and asked, "How many ways do you know of?" 1. Difui hesitantly said. They looked at one another in mutual understanding that they both failed in cooking. Gu Shijie was curious about the taste of the egg, but still felt that cooking it would be a waste. It was not easy to get the egg, so hatching the egg sounded like a better idea. Therefore, she came up with an excuse. For such a valuable egg, we should get someone professional to handle it. With this size, it can be turned into a few dishes. Difui dismissed her suggestion. No can do, it has to be cooked right here. Let's just boil it. The taste of its freshness will be retained if we boil it. Sponsored content. Gu Shijie was still in awe. May I ask, how many times have you cooked this sort of egg? Difui pointed out 3 fingers. Not many, only 3, if this time counts. This belongs to the majestic being after all. It is insufficient and most importantly, inappropriate for frequent hunting. Also, I do not like to keep eating the same food. Typically, I don't want to eat something more than 3 times. Gu Shijie was shocked. Have you just pushed the candle dragons to extinction? I do know that it is hard for the candle dragon to breed. It is usually only 1 egg for a nest. Are there many of them in Earthsea? Difui shook his head. Not too many. I know that there are not more than 100. The place is really their home. Sponsored content. She was not expecting the amount. Gu Shijie thought there were only 3 or 4 of them left. Luckily, 3 stolen eggs would not drive the candle dragon towards extinction. What effect does the egg have? Gu Shijie was intrigued by the scarcity of such a valuable resource. She had never used such an egg in her entire medical career. With someone who was brave enough to hunt for such an egg, she had thought that it would surely be used to hatch the creature. You will know about it soon, Difui simply said. The man was trying to be mysterious. Gu Shijie asked no further questions. Since she could not help with the cooking part, she decided to take the time to meditate. Not too far away, a whirling mass of cold air was slowly terrorizing the ice. She wanted to venture into the vortex to restore some of her spiritual energy. However, she was immediately stopped. Not now. If you go now, you will be frozen into an ice statue. I just came out of the vortex a few days ago. I used to be in its core for a few days. It was then, not now. Every time we visit, the place will be reset. We need to comply with the new rules. Gu Shijie thought about the pill that he offered to her. Could you give me the pill that you had given me before? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsor's game to support us. Difui crossed his arms and replied, "The pill is rather valuable. I do not offer it to anyone quite as frequently. Also, I remember that we do not owe each anything other anymore, so I do not see the point." Sponsored content. Gu Shijie disdained his tone of mockery. She took another look at the vortex of spiritual energy swirling in the air, and was rather troubled. It was like staring at a huge pot of treasure that she was not allowed to touch. I can offer you something else in exchange for the pill. Take a look and see what you fancy, Gu Shijie suggested while opening up her storage bag wide enough for him to choose something. She then took out dozens of other stuff, each with its own value. Difui took a casual look. You do have many valuable things to offer, but I do not like any of these. I have no intention to trade. Gu Shijie clenched her fists in mild irritation. Determined, she proceeded to take out a pair of bracelets from a very hidden corner of her storage bag. The bracelets shone with 7 colored rays, glistening with a sense of auspiciousness and beauty the moment they were presented, as ethereal as infinite light. I will trade the pill for this pair of bracelets. She was concerned that he might not know about the bracelet's value and added, the jade was harvested from within the cores of the Buzhou Mountains. The pair of jade bracelets were made naturally over time. These bracelets are treasures, both equipped with spiritual senses. In times of danger, they can be turned into glass dragons to protect you. Sponsored content. She gave the bracelets a flick, turning them into a pair of glass dragons of lustrous white and yellow. The yellow one was as shiny as gold, whereas the white one was as pure as snow. They surrounded Gu Shijio obediently, winking and nodding to her. Their cuteness was almost irresistible. However, Difui was not interested at all. These things are so girly. They look fancy but are not practical. Gu Shijio in her defense answered, "These things are not only for girls. Have you seen these glass dragons? They will choose their own master and his or her partner. Once matched, they would hook themselves onto their newly found masters. You are still young, so I am sure there will come a time when you look for a wife. With these bracelets, it will be easy." Difui finally responded, "Are they made for matchmaking? Why haven't they found someone for you?" After a pause, Gu Shijio still could not hide her amusement. "As the creator of the universe, marriage is not quite suitable for me." Sponsored content. Why not? Difui asked. "The creator is responsible for every existence in the world. I need to be compassionate for all and not affectionate to one. Personal relationships should be avoided at all costs, so that I can dispense equal justice to all." Difui gazed at her. "Do you mean to say that the Divine Lord should never fall in love?" "Yes." "Who made this rule?" Sponsored content. About that. "You are the creator of the universe. Everything that has ever existed, or will ever exist, is all created by you, Divine Lord. That means so are the rules. If something is not reasonable, you can always change it. Which part of it is unreasonable?" Divine Lord, being in love is one of the many forms of love. You have friends and disciples, and you have shown them the qualities of kindness and humanity. Even your servant was showered with kindness. I know that you are capable of loving someone, so why should you keep yourself from falling in love?" Gu Shijio was a little dumbstruck, so she started reminiscing. Many years ago, there seemed to be more than just one creator. She had a feeling that she was not alone, but could not remember anything clearly. Nonetheless, they could have passed on. Like everyone else, catastrophe would strike, and immortalization would occur. She, for example, was going through the final stage of her long life. With or without the rule, there was no reason for her to find a partner. Certainly, she was not going to share that fact with him. She did not want to linger on the topic, so with a smile, she said in a soft voice, "Young man, you are going off topic. I intend to trade these bracelets for the pill. We are not here to discuss marriages. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsors game to support us." "Young man," Difui asked half-smilingly. "Divine Lord, how young do you think I am?" Sponsored content. "To me, you are only a child." She then said magnanimously, "I am so much older than you." Before she could utter another word, Difui was already flashing a mirror in front of her. In the mirror, she did not look as refined and elegant as she remembered. In fact, she was caught by utter surprise by her reflection. There was a young lady that was only about 14 or 15 years old, staring back at her. Her eyes were bright and beautiful, looking as delicate as ever. Gu Shijio was still in shock. Subconsciously, she touched her face, and the lady in the mirror did the same. Something was wrong. Had the mirror reflected a different age? Or did she really look that young? Sponsored content. Gu Shijio skipped all the unnecessary questions, and proceeded to take out her own mirror. She would assume that it would depict reality as it appeared. The mirror was so clear to the point where one could see the pores on their supple skin. There were no filters or beautifying effects on Gu Xijia's mirror. However, the reflection in the mirror was still a young, delicate girl, nothing different from the one she saw earlier. She had become younger. No wonder the length of her dress bothered her a little. She kept catching her foot on its hem, and stumbled a few times. At first, she thought she did not tie her dress properly, but that was not the case. Could her dying day have been brought forward? Swiftly, She briefly calculated the remaining days that she had on Earth, but there was no result. Something major must have occurred to change the course of her life. However, her immortalization remained inevitable. Living a few extra years did not make any difference. Sponsored content Gu Shijio soon got over the fact that she was dying. However, she could not believe that she was being arrogant on account of her seniority with this young face of hers. It was rather odd. She kept the mirror away and said with all seriousness, "My tender looks do not define me. All right, we should not be talking about this matter. We are getting derailed again. Would you like to trade the pills for my bracelets?" "All right, I am taking your offer, but first, I would like to examine it." He took the golden bracelet and put it on his wrist right away. However, it did not attach itself to his wrist immediately. You need to drip some blood on it to identify yourself. Gu Shijio taught him the proper way. Sponsored content Difui dripped a small drop of his blood on the bracelet. Soon, the bracelet turned into a glass dragon and surrounded Difui for a while, as though examining if the man was worthy of its submission. After one round, the glass dragon went straight to his wrist and nodded at him. It then turned and circled itself into a bracelet and fitted well on his wrist. Gu Shijio was slightly surprised, as she knew that the bracelet was quite picky when it came to finding a master. She tried to give the bracelet away to someone else before, but it refused to submit itself and took a bite on the man's wrist instead. It was easy this time. The bracelet was indeed a good choice. Delighted, Gu Shijio handed him with another bracelet. "Keep this one. It will bring you surprises in the future." Difui took it close to his face to have a closer look at it. He remained unconvinced. "Does it work? How do you know that it is going to work? Have you tested it?" She indeed had not. However, she could not tell him that. "This is a magical item. There is no need to examine it," she casually said. She wanted to make something up, but suddenly, the white bracelet flew out of Difui's hand and turned into a white glass dragon. It surrounded Gu Shijio in the same manner as it did to Difui moments ago, and abruptly hooked itself onto her wrist. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsors game to support us. Gu Shijio was utterly shocked. Meanwhile, Difui took a look at the bracelet in his hand, then at hers. He smiled at her, but only in a way that confused her even more. Sponsored content. This thing has been around for tens of thousands of years. It is probably going a little haywire now. It must have thought that I am still its master, so it came right back to me. While she tried to explain herself, she tapped on the bracelet as if to wake it up. "Hey, little white. Time to get to your new master." However, the bracelet remained unresponsive. Gu Shijio tried the hard way. "If you refuse to obey me, I will break you into two halves." Nonetheless, the bracelet still ignored her instruction. Amused, Difui stood aside and watched as she performed multiple tricks to get the bracelet off her wrist. He could not believe that the name that she had given the bracelet was unbelievably simple. "If it is named Little White, should mine be called Little Yellow?" Sponsored content No. Gu Shijio was against it. Little Yellow does not sound right. Who would give it such a bad name? What is it called then? Little Gold. Dumbstruck, Difui paused for a little while. "Let us just agree that Little Gold is more appropriate," Difui answered. Gu Shijio continued to try to get the bracelet off her wrist, but nothing worked. It was stuck. There was no way she could take it off. Sponsored content perplexed. Difui took another look at the bracelet on his wrist. He never took the matter seriously, nor had he thought about marrying someone. Although he was still young, he made up his mind that he would not fall in love throughout his life. As for the Divine Lord, what he had done for her was mostly to take advantage of her powerful nature, and then compensate her for the losses that she had to suffer. However, it turned out that there was also a small amount of emotions involved, though he did not see that coming. Gu Shijio started to panic. Desperately, she started thinking if she should try taking the bracelet off using one of her weapons. She looked up and was immediately locked in Difui's intense gaze. His eyes indicated to her that he was smiling. It can help me find my future wife, right? He added. Gu Shijio could feel sweat dripping along her skin. Technically, yes. So, are you the one? Sponsored content. This must have been a huge misunderstanding. It must be reluctant to leave me. My spiritual power is at my all-time low now, so perhaps it thinks that it should stay to protect me. By the time my power comes back, it will let go of my wrist surely. Di Fui answered with a tone of respect. It seems this is also a righteous bracelet. Of course. Di Fui laughed at the absurdity. He did not comment any further and soon became occupied with his task of cooking the egg. The water in the pot was actually melted from snow, and the man was using some unique firewood. It was a kind of red sandalwood, which became fragrant when burned. Troubled, Gu Shijio did not expect that her good intention would end up in such a major misunderstanding. All she wanted was the pill. Anyway, since the golden bracelet had already been given away, he should at least give the pill to her now. Fui, shouldn't you be giving me the pill now? Slowly, Di Fui used the samadhi fire to burn the red sandalwood. Divine Lord, what you initially offered to me was a pair of bracelets. At the moment, I only have one, and the other one is with you. Since I only have one side, should I give you only half of the pill? Gu Shijio was speechless. What use could there be with only half of the pill? Clearly, the man was wicked. He kept making up excuses to deny her request. In that case, would you please give little gold back to me? Gu Shijio reached out her hand to him. Di Fui glanced at the bracelet on his wrist and answered casually. I cannot take it off either. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note, please download the sponsors game to support us. Di Fui had secretly tried to remove it earlier, but the bracelet was stubbornly intact. He would have lost his temper long ago if someone else had given him something that he did not want and yet had no way to remove. The bracelet was, however, an exception. The more he looked at it, the more he became fond of it. Sponsored content. Meanwhile, Gu Shijio did not believe him. That is impossible. How did Little Gold identify its master so quickly? Di Fui understood her concerns, so he offered his hand to her generously. You may try if you do not believe me. Gu Shijio decided to give it a go herself. She stretched out one hand to secure his wrist, and then tried to remove the bracelet with her other hand, only to prove that the bracelet remained securely fastened. He was right. Di Fui watched as she became occupied with the task at hand, and was lost in the moment. Her hands were small and delicate, while her fingers long and slender. Even without any polishing, her nails were naturally toned in pink. He was especially drawn to her soft, supple skin. He then turned his attention to her face. Her face was silky smooth, as tender as the delicate petals of cherry blossoms. The more he looked at her, the more he was attracted to her plump, sexy lips. Sponsored content. Gu Shijio was unaware of his gaze as she was busy with the bracelet. Sadly, she realized that the bracelet could not be returned. That was it. Perhaps it would make things easier if she tried to get her own bracelet off instead. She refused to believe that she was unable to take off a simple bracelet, so she let go of Di Fui's hand. All right, I will just give the bracelet away for free. Frustrated, she did not care about the item that she had given away. She cared about the pill that she would never get. The thought of spending the rest of her time in the appearance of a young girl terrified her. Gu Shijio took another look at him and started wondering if she should take the pill from him by force or by threat. Would you care for a drink? Di Fui suddenly offered her a bottle gourd of wine. The cap had been unsealed, filling the air with its wonderful aroma. Gu Shijio liked to drink. She had tasted many wines to know that the one that he held was a great bottle. Therefore, she put her troubles aside and took out a wine glass. Yes, please. Sponsored content. With a smile, Di Fui filled her cup. Gu Shijio wanted to down it right away, but was stopped by a sudden grasp by her wrist. Drink it later with the egg, Di Fui added. His hot palm made her feel uncomfortable, so Gu Shijio involuntarily pulled her hand away. She looked at the bronze pot and asked, Are you going to share the egg with me? Yes, in exchange for the bracelet that you have just given to me. I do not like to be indebted to someone else for their kindness. I am not asking for the egg. I want the pill. If you are going to make up for my loss, I would suggest you give me what I want. Sponsored content. The pill has to be exchanged for a pair of bracelets, as promised. It would not be appropriate for you to go against your words. Gu Shijiu said nothing more. In the meantime, Di Fui continued to cook the egg. He opened up the lid, and the egg smelled really great. He fished the egg out of the pot and cut it into 4 pieces. Here, try it. He offered a portion to her. Gu Shijiu could not vent her frustration at Di Fui. The man was quite a rascal, but he could always come out with proper reasons to defend actions. Hence, she decided to stop arguing with him. The egg had certainly caught her attention. She never knew that a candle dragon's egg was also separated into 2 parts, the yolk and the albumen. The yolk was crimson in color, in contrast with the pale shades of blue around it. It looked rather appetizing. She took her first bite and was immediately impressed. Although the egg was only plainly boiled, the taste was the opposite of plain. It somewhat reminded her of a strong, fruity taste. Also, she finally got to drink the wine. The perfect combination of the wine and the egg was beyond satisfying. The taste was addictive. Before she knew it, she already ate the entire portion of the egg. Meanwhile, 6 cups of wine were downed. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsors game to support us. Di Fui consumed a portion of the egg as well, but only with 3 cups of wine. Sponsored content. Gu Shijiu wanted to fill her cup with more wine, so he decided to intervene. You should not overdrink this wine, he said while keeping the bottle away. However, Gu Shijiu had not had enough. I am a great drinker. I will not get drunk even after a dozen rounds. If we are going to drink today, we have to go all out. You are so fussy. Is this how a man should behave? Di Fui watched as her face turned scarlet. You are way underage to drink this much, he slowly said as a reminder. Gu Shijiu wanted to take away the bottle in his hand. As I said, this is only restricted to my face. As she said that, dizziness took over her head, so she staggered to her feet and swayed a little. Instead of the bottle, she fell right into his arms. Her current behavior was diametrically opposed to her usual attitude. She was obviously a little drunk, and it was easy to tell from her breaths that smelled of alcohol. Sponsored content. Di Fui steadied her up and said, "You are drunk." He started to regret letting her drink so much, for he had overestimated her physical capability as a divine being. He thought 6 cups of wine would not make any difference, but apparently he was wrong. I am not drunk, Gu Shijiu said in a serious tone. She tried to keep her composure and stared at him with stern authority. In fact, she would have been able to pull it off if she had not downsized to the tender look of a petite girl. She tried to be serious, but it was impossible with the adorable face of hers. Di Fui tried to hold his laughter. Right, you are not drunk. Gu Shijiu swayed a little in response. Of course, I can never get drunk. 1,000 cups will still be too little. This amount of wine can never get me drunk. Don't you try to fool me. Sure, I dare not fool you. Di Fui swiftly agreed. Meanwhile, he also fed her a pill. Sponsored content. Gu Shijiu protested. This is not the one. Surely, it is not. This pill is to get you sober. As I said, I am not drunk. I do not need it. All right, take this now, and when you are sober, I will give you the one that you wanted. Although her drunken face was adorable, her sobriety was his concern, even though he was well aware that it was probably his only chance to see her drunk. Unfortunately, she needed a clear mind in order to continue her cultivation. As he had risked a great deal to get the candle dragon's egg, he could not let it go to waste. Gu Shijiu finally listened to him and took the pill. Sponsored content. Meanwhile, Di Fui casually asked, Divine Lord, do you have a name? Gu Shijiu was at a loss for words. She could not think of a name, but she did not want to make a fool of herself in front of him. She proudly said, I do not need a name. She then pulled his sleeves to ask for more wine. Do you still have any wine? Let us drink some more. Apparently, she really liked drinking. Difui stared at her attentively. It makes me feel rather estranged to keep addressing you as the Divine Lord. May I give you a name? What about Shijio? Good. Good one. I did not expect you to come up with such a good name. Gu Shijio pulled his sleeves even tighter. What if you become my disciple? Once you become my disciple, you can give me any name that you like. Dumbstruck, Difui certainly did not foresee the plot twist. Usually, the master would be the one naming the disciple, not vice versa. He looked at her tender face again and said, All right, if you agree to the name, I will agree to become your disciple, he jokingly said. Gu Shijio was impressed with the young man's ability. To be honest, she had always wanted him to become her disciple. However, the only thing that she did not like was his cold and calculative mind, which was why she took so long to ask. Also, Difui was an arrogant man. Even if she asked him, he would definitely not agree to her proposition. The man's kung fu was unique and of his style. Even without a master to guide him through, his future would still be very promising. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsor's game to support us. Since Gu Zijia's life was already coming to an end, it seemed pointless for her to pursue a disciple that did not need her. Hence, she never really brought it up. Sponsored content nevertheless, now that she was drunk, filter in her mouth and brain no longer worked. She finally told him what she had been thinking all this time. Intuitively, she knew it was the right time to talk, so she seized the moment. All right, I promise, Difui promptly said. As soon as he made that promise, a streak of lightning came flashing down from within the clouds. The dazzling streak surrounded the duo like gilts flying around the air. Difui was dumbstruck by what had happened. Gu Shijio, on the other hand, seemed very happy. A promise has been made, further enhanced by the streak of flash. From now on, you will be my disciple. Difui was still in shock and did not utter a word. Gu Shijio kept on smiling victoriously. About that, I just remembered that my real name is Shijio. The name that you offered resonates it just well. Sponsored content speechless, Difui tried to make sense of the situation. He had a feeling that he had been fooled, big time. Although he could not believe that drunk Gu Shijio had deceived him, he was rather amused by the absurdity of the entire situation. He took a look at the sky and then looked back at her in disbelief. She could not even sit properly when she was drunk. Also, he could not believe that a joke of his would end up becoming a solemn promise. Gu Shijio could not hide the happiness that was blossoming from within her. She reached out to him and said, What a great disciple you are. You should start showing me more respect. Here, give me some wine. Respect? Difui was quite puzzled by her request. I thought you would use your newly established authority to ask for the pill. She had honestly forgotten about that. All right, hand me the pill. She moved closer to him. As requested, Difui put a pill on her palm, and Gu Shijio immediately popped it into her mouth. In a second, she disapproved of the pill. What a lie! The pill you gave me is to keep me sober. Sponsored content. The pills looked and tasted almost the same, but Gu Shijio could still tell them apart even with the slightest taste. She wanted him to know that she was not someone who could be easily fooled. This came as a relief for Difui as he was glad that she was not too drunk. Why did you give me this pill? Because you need it, so I was being kind. Oh, but I am not drunk. People are dumb when they are drunk, but not me. I have successfully made you a disciple. Difui was speechless. It was a topic he would very much like to avoid right now. For the first time, he felt stupid. Sponsored content. Everything happened when she was drunk, so perhaps he needed to settle the matter once and for all, while she was still drunk. He then took out a pill. It was the one that Gu Shijio had wanted from the beginning. He revealed it briefly in front of her eyes and asked, Do you still want it? Yes, give it to me. All right, repeat after me, and this pill will be yours. If you do it well, I might consider giving you 2 pills. Gu Shijio became immediately intrigued. What is it? Listen up, say, Difui, you are no longer my disciple. Gu Shijio shook her head vigorously in protest. No, she rejected his request without a second thought. Difui tried to persuade her. As far as I am concerned, you do not exactly like me, do you? Right, you are too calculative in my opinion. I do not like that. Gu Shijio told him how she really felt, and Difui was quite surprised to hear it. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Note: please download the sponsors game to support us. Chapter 28-26. Accepting a Disciple 5. He was mentally prepared, but it was not enough. Difui felt that he had been very kind to Gu Shijio. He treated her better than all of the women that he had ever met, and yet she was still complaining about him. What was wrong with being calculative? If he had been any less calculative, he would be long dead in this brutal world. He would certainly not have lived long enough to be sitting down with her today. Difui could not help but feel bad. However, there was still a chance. Now that she had confessed what she actually thought about him, he should take this chance and go for more. If you dislike me so much, why did you insist on taking me as your disciple? To make us hate each other even more? It is torture for both of us, isn't it? Let's do it. Remove me as your disciple. No. Troubled, all of Difui's persuasions were met with stern rejection. Determined to see this through, he decided to go all in. Divine Lord, you must be really cautious when it comes to taking a disciple, right? I know that Fan Qianshi has been through many obstacles in order to become your disciple. I am only a stranger to you. You barely even know me. I can be much worse than who you think I am. Gu Shijio blinked at him after that remark. How bad can you possibly be? Difui exaggerated. I do not like to be controlled by anyone or anything. I do not even care if it is an act of kindness. I have done many things that hurt the people who cared for me. Many years ago, I was homeless, and a man brought me in, but he never stopped trying to convince me about being his disciple. In the end, I killed him because he was annoying. Gu Shijio gave him a look of disbelief. I do not buy that. She knew that he would not do something that destroyed his conscience. With a smirk, he continued in a wicked tone. You may know my face, but you do not know my heart. You have no idea who I really am. Gu Shijio stared at him blankly with her eyes wide open, so he was not sure if she was in shock or that she did not care about what he was saying. Nevertheless, she looked adorable. In fact, Difui had tried very hard to suppress his urge to caress her hair. Slowly, he shifted his body towards her and continued. Also, I like to flirt with my master. Once a woman's life was made miserable because of me. Quietly, Gu Shijio continued to gaze at him in a lack of engagement. Difui lowered his body to look into her eyes and then grasped her by the wrist and said, After hearing all these stories, do you still want to keep me as your disciple? Aren't you worried that I might do something bad to you too? He tried to keep his voice low to sound as creepy as he could. He wanted her to feel a sense of danger. Gu Shijio was finally awake from her preoccupation. She pushed his face aside and said righteously, I cannot escape my destiny. I would rather suffer this myself than to let others go through hell for me. Obviously, Difui was triggered. He did not know what to answer her anymore. All he knew that was that the lady was unusually stubborn. He squinted his eyes at hers and swiftly pulled her into his arms and held her tightly. Still drunk, Gu Shijio could barely even sit still on her own. Therefore, she would not have any strength to resist him. Hence, she fell straight into his arms. She could feel her head spinning as she asked, What are you doing? Difui gave her a wicked smile. I am going to. He then stopped for a moment. After a pause, he finally said, To kill you after raping you. He was confident that he had definitely crossed the line, so Difui waited for her to defend herself. She might slap his face or kick him away anytime now. He was prepared for all sorts of outcomes, which would all lead to the same, ideal situation. He was hoping that she would take back her words about taking him as a disciple. Dumbstruck, she responded in a terrible manner, Ha! Her gaze was locked on his face, and she looked incredibly innocent. Difui's heart skipped a beat as soon as their eyes met. In wonder, he could not find the words that he planned to say. Suddenly, Gu Zijia's body language suggested that she was rather disappointed. Why do you refuse the offer? Is it because I am too pretty? Difui had no answer for her ludicrous question. Chapter 28-27. Accepting a disciple 6. Modesty obviously meant nothing to her. Difui thought that Gu Shijie was sobering up, but clearly, she was still drunk. Apparently, he could not even persuade a drunken woman to change her mind. This certainly made him feel like a failure. Difui took a glance at her beautiful face, which then reminded him of Fan Qianshi. When they were still in the Monster Kingdom, he once saw how they interacted with one another. The way Fan Qianshi looked at her openly showed that he was obsessed with her. Irritated by the thought, he decided to pull her into his embrace. Baby, I did not know you like it this way. Did you want me to become your disciple so that I can become obsessed with you, just like Qianshi? For the first time, the man thought he made a powerful statement. Gu Zijia's head was still spinning. She could not seem to understand him, so she stared at him blankly. Ha! She swayed her body a little, but carelessly tripped over her own foot and fell forward onto Difui. Their lips accidentally touched each other. And since she fell hard, the kiss was a real, solid one. In fact, Difui could even taste some blood. Before he could push her away, she had already teleported for about 30 feet away from him. Certainly, Difui was stunned by her speedy recovery. He looked at her in an attempt to make a joke about the situation in order to reduce the awkwardness, but saw that she was slowly wiping her lips with a silk handkerchief. Needless to say, Difui he felt a little offended. No one had ever been able to come close enough to him for such an intimate exchange. She was the only one who had kissed him before, and yet she seemed disgusted. In fact, he was quite hurt by the way she teleported away from him. His frustration took over his composure as he said, "Is this how a master should treat her disciple? To welcome him with reluctance?" He did not manage to finish what he wanted to say, as Gu Shijie glared at him with fierce eyes. Her eyes were bright and clear, showing no signs at all that she was drunk. She stood casually and let out a victorious smile, like a cunning little fox. "Difui, now that you have addressed me as your master, you should listen and do as I say. Stop talking about things that no longer matter." Difui continued to observe her, feeling that he had just fallen into her trap. "Were you acting drunk?" Quietly, Gu Shijie only smiled at him. She was drunk, but only for a while. She soon recovered her consciousness, thanks to her unique physique. Furthermore, Difui had given her a pill to help her sober up, so it only took 15 minutes for her to recover. She never thought that she would be able to get herself a disciple even when she was clearly not able to think straight. Gu Shijie reached out her hand and said, "My great disciple, give me the pills that I have requested from you." This time, Gu Shijie spoke with a sense of authority. Difui paused for a little while, but soon became hypnotized by her words. He did as she said and took out a pill. He knew it was against his will, but he could no longer control his movements. He had to fulfill her command. Relieved, Gu Shijie finally acquired the pill she wanted. "What have you done to me?" Difui calmly asked. "I cast a spell on you that makes you do as I say. As proven, it is working just fine." Difui touched his lips, where her taste still lingered. "So the fall was intentional? It was just so that you could cast a spell on me?" "Yes, indeed." Difui scornfully replied. "I have done so many things for you, and this is what I get in return." Gu Shijie found it hard to defend her actions, but she had no other choice. The spell was the last thing that she wanted to do. However, his stories about how he killed his master and murdered the man who adopted him were quite terrifying. She was not sure if she could trust him entirely. Besides, the spell would not affect his health at all. She knew she would only use it when necessary. Chapter 28-28. I am reluctant to explain everything that I do. She swallowed the pill, but it tasted different again. This time, it was bitter. Gu Shijie was certain that the pill was identical to the one she had consumed before. So perhaps her body was the problem. She somehow felt that her sense of taste had changed. She looked at Difui and caught him looking at her in an unusually casual manner. The look in his eyes was not entirely friendly though. Divine Lord, what happened to you in the Monster Kingdom was all part of my plan, but it worked, didn't it? Thanks to me, your servant and disciple are now safe. Hesitantly, Gu Shizhou answered. I agree, so I did not blame you on that. Difui smiled but made no further comment on the incident. However, I still felt the need to give you something in recognition of your loss. So I dived into the deep earth sea and risked my life to secure this candle dragon's egg. All for the sake of your health and well-being. I have not told you about its nutrients, have I? The candle dragon is a treasure. Every part of its body, from its scales to its bones, is enough to nourish one's vitality and nurse one's body. However, the candle dragon I encountered was essentially young, which is incompatible with your body of Yin. Its bone and flesh will not work for you. It can possibly cause more harm than good. Therefore, I decided to take its egg instead. The egg is either Yin or Yang, so it is perfect for your recuperation. Gu Shizhou was shocked. She did not know that she was the reason he went all the way to steal the egg. However, she still had some doubts. How did you know that we were going to meet? Difui replied sarcastically. I plan to visit you in Tianyin Valley after I survived the challenges in Earthsea. I plan to take you all the way here to this glacier, and give this egg to you as a gift. Why must I eat the egg here? Its effect can only be put to use here. Gu Shizhou did not know what to say. Why didn't you say so earlier? If she knew, she would not have cast a spell on him. I am reluctant to explain everything that I do. I will do what is best and make no regrets. Bragging about my achievement is not my style. It was his way of dealing with things. Remorse started to pour in. Did you mean that I can actually go into the vortex right after consuming the egg? The pill is not needed anymore? Absolutely. The pill will only work for first-timers. You are here for the second time, so the pill is no longer effective. If not, why would I risk my life to get the candle dragon's egg? Gu Shizhou remained silent. She finally knew why the pill tasted different. It was because it no longer worked. If he had told her about his plan, she would not have tricked him. Nevertheless, it was all too late now. Difui looked at her steadily and intently. Divine Lord, now that everything is said and done, would you kindly take back the discipleship? As opposed to his usual style, this time, he chose to explain everything thoroughly, which was something that Gu Shizhou was not quite used to. She heaved a sigh before conveying the disappointment. No. Shocked, Difui looked at her in disbelief. Still, don't you trust me at all? It is not that I do not trust you. God has witnessed the fact that you are my disciple. If we decide to act against it, the consequences would be inevitable, summoned by the wrath of heaven. Consequences? What kind of punishment are we talking about? To be struck by 9 streaks of heavenly lightning. Difui smilingly said, 9 streaks of lightning are bearable to me. I am not afraid of the punishment. The oath was made out as a joke. Could there really be punishment if he insisted on going against it? Was she trying to scare him, or did she really think of him as a fool? Chapter 28-29. I am reluctant to explain everything that I do too. Even if there was any punishment, he was not worried. He was willing to take the risk to regain his freedom, even if that meant depleting half of his spiritual power. In fact, it was Gu Shizhou who seemed more troubled. I am worried. The catastrophe would usually be harmless for a celestial or divine being. However, her health was obviously not at its finest. She might get killed by the heavenly lightning if struck. She could not tell him the truth, but Difui already knew what she was thinking. He said sarcastically, As a divine lord, are you really worried about a few streaks of lightning? Gu Shizhou insisted on keeping her deterioration as a secret. She could not tell him that she was already dying, albeit slowly. I have my own reasons. I hereby reassure you that I will not use my status as your master to make you do anything. If you are reluctant to announce it publicly, we can keep this between us. Also, I will stop using the controlling spell. This was the best she could do. Filled with guilt, she decided to give him a little something in return. She then took out a shiny, purplish pill from her storage bag. This is the marrow-washing purple pill. Take 1 pill, and it will fuel your spiritual power, equivalent to 1,000 years' worth of cultivation. There was only 1 pill left, as it was produced from an extremely rare kind of herb from almost tens of thousands of years ago. She did not remember most of the things in her distant past, but the pill had made a profound impression on her as its production was a rather tricky process, thus making it so valuable. She had been through a terrible time trying to produce the pill. Only under 3 strict conditions could the pill be produced. Firstly, she needed to channel her full strength to create a steady flow of firepower. Secondly, all kinds of rare herbs were required in the process. Lastly, she must have the right alchemy skills to produce the pill. As of this moment, she had the skills but not the strength. She did not even have the herbs anymore. Therefore, this pill was the only one left. It was impossible to get more. Gu Shijiu cherished the pill very much as it could help to increase one's spiritual power by a tremendous scale. In fact, it could also resurrect the dead as long as the person was not dead for more than 3 days. The pill was her last hope, in case she needed more time to organize her passing when her life was almost coming to an end. With the pill, she estimated that she could extend her lifespan for at least 3 to 5 years. But now, she was giving away the pill as a gift. Before Gu Shijiu even had the time to explain the nature of the pill, it was simply dismissed by Di Fui from her hand. I do not care. He pushed it hard, so the pill went flying across the air. Unfortunately, it landed in moving water, so as soon as it touched the water, it vanished completely. Shocked, Gu Shijiu teleported to the river. Sadly, it was too late for Gu Shijiu to get the pill. She was the one who made the pill, so she knew it would dissolve as soon as it was in contact with water. Even if she jumped into the water, there would be nothing left for her to trace. Thence she had just lost something of great value to her. Trembling, she glared at him furiously. You. How could you? Di Fui seemed even more annoyed, so he answered in an unfriendly manner. Are you trying to make me surrender my freedom for this pill? Never. He could not care less and decided to leave right away. Gu Shijiu could not say anything much to defend herself. She paused for a moment before heaving a sigh. Later, she sat calmly on a snow-capped rock and started contemplating. The pill was not even meant to exist, so perhaps its disappearance was destined. But his exaggeration certainly came as a surprise to her. She would not have forced him to become her disciple in the first place, if she knew this was going to happen. What a regret, she thought remorsefully. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.